My cousin's fiancé criticizes me for calling my aunt and uncle my mom and dad, claiming that even though they adopted me, apparently they're not my real parents and I have no right to call them that. And I'm honestly so offended that I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so here's some really important background information. I'm an 18-year-old female, and when I was 3 years old, my father, unfortunately, passed away in a car crash, leaving my mother alone to take care of me. But with the death of my father, she spiraled into depression, and she became an alcoholic, and the alcohol addiction opened up to basically more addiction, and that's when my father's family stepped in. With the help of the courts, I was removed from her custody, and from there, I was put into the care of my aunt and uncle, and they eventually adopted me after my mom passed away about a year later. So I've spent most of my life living with my aunt and uncle, and during middle school, I started to call them mom and dad. It just feels right to me, and no one in my family has any issue with it, or at least they haven't said anything about it. That is until this weekend. And for the sake of the post, I'm gonna refer to them as mom and dad for the rest of the story. So this weekend, we went to spend Memorial Day weekend at my grandparents' house on my mom's side, and at their place, they have like a 2-acre plot of land, so it's common for my extended family to go there on special occasions and or basically just holidays. Well, this weekend, I got to meet one of my cousin's fiancé. It was my first time meeting her, and I'm not gonna lie, she was a bit obnoxious, and she came off a bit spoiled. Like, she seems like the kind of person who would announce a pregnancy at a wedding. On Saturday, me, my mom, my dad, my cousin, the fiancé, my aunt, and uncle were all sitting at a table outside in the backyard chatting, and it's there that the fiancé said to me, "It's crazy how much you look like your mom, but you look nothing like your dad." She then said to my dad, "You sure she's yours?" And the joke flopped hard, and my dad and cousin gave a courtesy chuckle, and my mom spoke up and said, "Well, she's my brother's daughter. He passed away when she was 3, and her mom couldn't take care of her, so we've been raising her ever since." The fiancé then said, "Oh, but you called them mom and dad a few minutes ago." And I replied by saying, "Well, yeah." And everyone at that point was quiet for a second, and the fiancé broke the silence and said, "Why?" When she said this, I was a little confused and a bit annoyed. So I said to her, "Well, because I can. It's what I want to call them." The fiancé then said to me, "But that's weird. They're not your mom and dad. I don't like it." Well, as you can imagine, I was fed up with her by now, so I said to her, "Oh, okay, I'll make sure to write that down in my notes." The table was then silent, and it was super awkward after that, and I dismissed myself from the table and I went to hang out with my grandma. Now, I thought that the whole situation was over, but the next morning when I walked into the kitchen, my mom, my grandparents, and the fiancé were in there, and I walked up to my mom and I hugged her saying, "Good morning, Mom." After I said that, the fiancé looked at us and said, "I already told you, I don't like it when you call them that. They're your aunt and uncle, not your parents." My grandpa then said, "Hey, it's none of your business what the girl calls them. Mind your own business." Now, after that, she didn't really talk to me much, but she would give me weird looks whenever we were in the same room. But regardless, I hopefully won't see her again for a while, and I kind of feel bad for my cousin who has to deal with her, because her attitude is incredibly inappropriate. Okay, seriously, this fiancé was like actively pissing me off as I was reading this. You literally were adopted by your aunt and uncle. So guess what? They are legally your parents. That is literally how it works. Just because they were your aunt and uncle first doesn't mean that they're not now your parents after your parents have passed away and they adopted you. Like, that lady's an idiot for not only speaking up like that, especially with a family that she does not know, but also to be like, you can't say that because I don't like it when you say that. And it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. That is so stupid. So yeah, this fiancé of your cousin is a complete moron, and I would not pay them any mind, because those are absolutely your parents. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My manager told me to follow the schedule no matter what, so I did exactly that, closing our store incredibly early, resulting in my manager getting written up, as well as a lot of pissed off customers that couldn't get what they wanted. Here's how it went down. Okay, so this happened a few years back when I worked at a small chain retail store. I was a part-time shift supervisor, which basically meant I had all the responsibility and none of the pay. And we had this new manager who came in like a hurricane. She was super into structure and rules and wanted everything to be done exactly how corporate outlined it, which is fine. I'm all for structure. That is, until it becomes absolutely absurd. The issue started when we began getting inconsistent shipments and corporate would update our hours week by week. One week we would close by 9 o'clock and the next it would be 8 o'clock. The posted hours on the door weren't always updated quickly, and I would sometimes use discretion to keep the store open a little later if I saw customers still browsing around. You know, customer service and all that. But then my manager, who we will call Becky, pulls me aside one day and said that I was not being consistent. These were her words. "I don't care if there are 20 people in the store. If the schedule says close at 8, you close at 8. Lock the doors at 8 o'clock sharp. Don't use your judgment. Follow the schedule no matter what." Then she sent me an email about about it just to remind me. So this is where I decided to maliciously comply. That Friday, the mall was doing some late night promo thing and we were packed. Our schedule said 8 o'clock p.m. closing though, so I did exactly what I was told. At 7:55, I got on the intercom and I announced, "Attention shoppers, the store will be closing in 5 minutes. Please bring your items up to the front." Now people were confused. Other stores were staying open late, but I followed orders and at 8 o'clock sharp, I locked the doors. And even then, we had over 30 customers still inside, most of them with full carts. I made them all check out or leave, and some were pissed off, and some just left everything behind. I mean, we lost a lot of sales. Now, what's the cherry on top of this entire story? Becky showed up at 8 o'clock to check on how we handled the crowd and was livid to find the store dark and closed. She even tried to throw me under the bus, but I had her email printed out and highlighted where she said, "Do not use discretion. Follow the posted schedule exactly." Well, as a result, she got a formal write-up from the district manager, and from that point on, I was encouraged to use my judgment once again. Oh man, I love this so much because managers like this are so obnoxious. They literally give you specific guidelines that you need to follow, and then when you actually do that, and it doesn't work out the way they want it to, they try to turn around and be like, "Oh, this is your fault. You're the one that did this." And it's like, dude, thank God you got something in writing. Because if she didn't leave that paper trail, you can bet that she absolutely would have pinned this on you. And that is absolutely messed up. Like, that is so unfair. So good for you for getting back at this lady because she absolutely deserved it. An entitled Karen demands that I turn over my shopping cart to her literally as I'm checking out of the store, as she refuses to take no for an answer, despite the fact that I had $200 worth of groceries I needed to get to my car. Here's how it went down. Okay, so I was shopping at the grocery store checking out. I have a full cart of weekly shopping, some bulk items, party supplies for a little get-together that I'm having, and I'm literally halfway through checking out when this entitled Karen walks up behind me with nothing in her hands, just giving me the stink eye for my cart. And then she pats me on the back and says, "I need your cart." Now, I assumed she was referring to when I was done, so I said, "Oh, all right, I'm still using it though." She then says to me, "No, I need it now. I'm in a hurry and I don't have time to find one. I'm rushing to catch up with something." Now, when she said this, I was literally just standing there speechless. I said to her, "Ma'am, I'm literally using it right now." She then puffs out her chest and says to me, "Well, then take out your stuff. You can just carry it or put it in baskets. I only have a few things to get." Well, the cashier is now giving me the stare. The people behind me are piling up, and I just say to her, "No, I'm not unpacking $200 worth of groceries just because you don't feel like walking 10 feet to get a cart." She then muttered something about people not helping each other anymore, and then she stormed out. I then noticed that she wheeled a cart straight close to the entrance when she left, meaning she walked past them to come disturb me in the first place, which honestly baffles me because this is such a waste of everybody's time. Oh my gosh, this is really weird behavior. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody going up to someone in line and being like, "Oh, give me your cart." Because even during like busy times, you can always find some kind of cart near like the front of the store. Why would you go up to someone in line and be like, "Oh, I need that one right now. No one else's, just yours." So yeah, this was really weird, and I don't blame you for being like, "What in the heck is going on right now?" Because I know if I was in your shoes, I would be pretty annoyed as well. My entitled coworker insists that I change my vacation days, all because her trip is more fun than mine. Here's what's going on. So at my workplace, we have to ask for vacation time months in advance at work because only a certain number of people can be off at a time. Well, I booked a week of vacation for a family reunion, and this is the first time we've all been together in years. Well, along comes Karen, who obviously didn't plan ahead and now wants to take the exact same week off for a Cancun trip with her friends. When she finds out I already had that week approved, she then asked me to cancel mine. I laughed at first because I thought she was kidding, but apparently she wasn't. She said to me, "Well, it's just a family thing, right? Mine is a real vacation with more fun than yours. I already told everyone that I'm going." I told her, "Well, yeah, but I already booked my flights like months ago." She didn't like that answer and actually tried to guilt trip me in front of my other coworkers, saying that I was being selfish and wrecking her once-in-a-lifetime trip. And by the way, as a side note, she goes on at least 3 vacations a year. When I wouldn't budge, she went to our manager and complained. And luckily, my boss wasn't stupid and said no if she wanted the time off that badly, and that she should have given advance notice. And as a result, she pouted for days and gave me the cold shoulder, all over vacation days that she easily could have planned for. Okay, I love this story because I've run into this exact same situation. You book plane tickets for a trip of some kind, you're going on vacation, you have a reunion, whatever. And then you have that one coworker that everybody hates that you just kind of have to put up with, who comes in and tries to be like, oh, you should cancel your trip. Like, that is super obnoxious, so I love the fact that the original poster shut this Karen down, because her behavior is super entitled and no one deserves to deal with that. My manager always called for a 20-minute meeting after work that was also unpaid, so I decided to get some revenge by literally refusing to show up and showing him exactly why this was a stupid idea. Here's how I did it. Okay, to start things out, this was a small team of 10 people that the manager was assigned to, with myself included. It's also important to note that this is not in America, so the US labor laws don't apply here. I was the last person to be hired on the team, so everybody was my senpai. And on the first day that I worked there, they called a team meeting after work. We log off our computers at about 4:55 p.m. We go to the meeting room and we clock out at about 5:15 p.m. And we do this every single day like clockwork. Now, I said no problem, that's an extra 2.5 hours on a bi-weekly paycheck. And we didn't have to do any actual work besides listen. Like, yeah, I'm totally okay with that. Well, when my first payday came in, I saw my full 80 hours, but the extra 2.5 hours were nowhere to be found. So I asked a couple of guys if they only got paid 80 hours too, and they all confirmed it, which meant that we were not getting paid for these meetings. The shift ends, and once again, the manager called for the daily team meeting and to log off at 4:55 and then head to the meeting room. So you know what? I do so. And with that, I sit there for about 5 minutes. And as soon as it hits 5 o'clock p.m., I get up and I say that I need to be somewhere important with everyone's eyes on me. The manager says okay, and then I leave the room, clocking out, and I go home. Well, the next day I do the same thing, and I keep doing that over and over again. And you know what? The manager never stops me. But one day, the manager pulls me to the side and asks me what's this important thing that I need to do after work every day. But it's then that I tell him it's a personal matter, and he leaves it at that. But pretty soon, he catches on. The other guys start leaving right after me, and eventually, within a matter of days of me starting to leave at 5 o'clock, everyone else started doing it too. So the manager started scheduling the meetings for 4:40 p.m., and all it took was one person to not take that crap anymore. Okay, dude, there is nothing that pisses me off more about working a job than having to work unpaid hours. I don't care if it's only 2 hours out of my paycheck. You better believe you're gonna pay me for that, especially if you're keeping me over. So good for you for, like, in a roundabout way, showing them that no, you're not gonna stick around off the clock, because that kind of behavior towards your employee is absolutely atrocious. Today, I got my manager yelled at by a customer over his dumb new rule for our restaurant, causing that rule to be fixed immediately after he got chewed out. Here's how it went down. So to understand what happened, you need to first understand two people, and we'll call these people Susan and Jack. You see, I used to work part-time at a burger joint that had a drive-thru, and I was often the one at the window. Susan was a regular customer, and everyone there had an opinion about her. She's very particular, and has a tendency to snap at you if you don't do it right the first time without being asked. I was her favorite employee though, because I would always take the time to chat with her if we weren't busy. She was actually quite pleasant once you got to know her, just a little bit prickly. And this is where I need to talk about Jack. He was the new general manager, and he was brought in to fix the restaurant. Now, I don't think there was anything that needed fixing, but the owner disagreed. He was originally meant to be the assistant general manager, but then the owner fired our old general manager and Jack was put in charge. He was a piece of work, the kind of manager that you don't want to have. My favorite Jack moment was when he pulled all the staff on shift into the back, literally while we were still open, just to lecture us on not smiling enough. And I'm sure you know the type of manager I'm talking about. Now, one thing we had to do in the drive-thru is put a numbered sticker on the car's side mirror. This sticker was used by the runners who took food out to identify the car, so it was very important. But Susan, however, didn't like having the sticker on her mirror. She was convinced that she would get in an accident if the mirror was covered even a little, and always insisted on having it put on the car door instead. This wasn't out of the ordinary. I mean, we put stickers on doors all the time when we couldn't reach the mirror. However, Jack decided he wasn't having it and made a new rule that we only put stickers on mirrors. And I figured, okay, but if the customer asked for it, it should still be fine, right? Well, no, I was completely wrong. I got chewed out for putting the sticker on Susan's car door. I tried to explain to Jack why I did it, but he wouldn't even listen to me. Eventually, he just huffed at me and said, "Look, you need to put the stickers on the mirror and not the door. No exceptions." Well, fine then. I'll cue my malicious compliance and we'll see how this goes. The next time Susan came in, I put the sticker on her mirror as ordered. And when I did this, she was confused, as I always put it on her door without being asked. She then snapped at me, "What are you doing? Don't put it there, I'll get into an accident." I then explained to her the new rule and that my hands were tied. I mean, I didn't want to get in trouble after all. Then I told her it was Jack's rule. Now, I didn't get to witness the next day directly, unfortunately. However, I heard about it secondhand from my coworkers. Apparently, one of the runners brought out her food. She stopped them and asked them to grab Jack. She then proceeded to give Jack the chewing out of a lifetime about his dumb rule. One particular quote that was relayed to me was basically saying, What point is it to force them to put it there? They can see it just fine on the door. And you know what, Susan? Those are my thoughts exactly. Anyway, the rule was later amended that customers could request the sticker to be placed on their door. And trust me, this made my life with Susan a lot easier. Yeah, this is a stupid thing that Jack literally brought upon himself. All he had to do was be accommodating to the customer, dude. It's not that serious. Just put the sticker on their car. I mean, like, come on. So yeah, Jack got exactly what he deserved because his rule was incredibly dumb. An entitled Karen chews me out all because I don't know all the details about the lawn and garden center that I work at my store, stating that I should know everything about this place and everything about the plant she's buying, even though I'm just a cashier. Here's what happened. So I was cashiering in the lawn and garden center at my store. When I was trained as a cashier, there was no training on the products throughout the store, just how to scan the product and the basics of customer service. Therefore, I really don't know anything about the plants and trees and flowers. That's the associate's job. They stock them so they know where they are located. The store phones will often not be useful in the location due to getting multiple lawn and garden trucks during the week, and the associates moving things around to make room for new products. But ultimately, I don't know anything about whether this plant or that flower will thrive in full sun, or if the ferns are still outside, or if they move them again. As a cashier, you are not allowed to leave your register to roam around or help the customer find something. My job is to ring you up, and that's it. The clientele in lawn and garden are mostly pleasant people looking to build their gardens or buy a lovely plant for their mother, but often, at least in every shift, there is one person who feels slighted because you have no knowledge. Well, this older lady comes up and has a baggie full of plants and flowers. She began putting the plants one by one on the counter and asking me questions about them, to which I would answer, I don't know and I'm not sure. I offered to find an associate for her, but she just waved her hand like it was no big deal. By about the fifth plant, after I had said yet again that I didn't know, she pulls her sunglasses off, looks me in the eye, clearly exacerbated, and says, "How can you work here and know nothing about plants?" I then told her that I was rotated throughout the store like the other cashiers, and that we are not trained to know the products we are selling, and that because we are not allowed to leave the register, I can't really familiarize myself with the plants and flowers. I asked again if she would like me to find an associate who does know the products, and she said she didn't have the time to wait for someone. I then plucked the plastic label from one of her plants out of the soil, and I showed her that it tells a little bit about how to care for the plant, and also there's a QR code that she can scan with her phone that will help out as well. Now, I was sincerely trying to be helpful, but she took that as me being snarky, and I could tell by the way she gave me a long stare. As she finished paying, she put her glasses back on and said nonchalantly, "Do you have a break coming up?" Now, this was an odd question, but I checked the clock and I said, "Yes, ma'am. I have a break in about 30 minutes. She then said to me, "Well, perhaps on your break you can walk around here and learn something." I then wished her a good day and I took my 30-minute break where I just sat in my car, listened to some music, and ate a Slim Jim. And then I took a nap like normal. And also, perhaps when she got home that day, she looked up the plants that she bought and learned something, because none of that is my responsibility. Dude, that lady's so annoying, especially in a world with smartphones. Like, really? You need to ask someone and harass some like hourly worker and be like, "Oh, you know nothing," instead of looking it up herself and being like, "Okay, what kind of sunlight does this stupid plant need?" Like, why go after a cashier who literally explained why they don't know anything about the store? That's literally not their job to know all this stuff. That's the associates. I can't stand people who act like that. That is so annoying. So truly, I think you handled this really well, especially when this Karen was being an obnoxious jerk. Am I the jerk for deciding to leave work early in protest, since my two coworkers stay in the back for more than 10 minutes and literally don't do any work? Here's what's going on. Okay, so I work in a place with two of my coworkers. Let's call them Zane and Marisha. And they have developed a habit of vanishing into the back room together during every shift. Every time we're scheduled together, they disappear for long stretches of time, leaving me alone up front doing all the work. Now, this is not a one-time thing. It's a pattern. I'm left juggling everything by myself while they're God knows where doing who knows what. It's frustrating, demoralizing, and honestly just disrespectful. Oh, and guess what? Management has already talked to them about this. More than once, mind you, and nothing's changed. Zane and Marisha keep doing it like they're invincible. And if you try to bring it up directly, Marisha immediately gets defensive and snaps with something like, "Well, I've been here since really early and I already did everything." And it's like, okay, and? You're still on the clock. It's not your break time. Just because you were here earlier doesn't mean that you're now entitled to vanish and leave your coworkers stranded like it's recess. We're all getting paid to be here and do our jobs, not hide in the back while someone else cleans up the mess. So I've reached my limit. This has been happening for over a year. I've decided that the next time they both disappear into the back and stay there for more than 10 minutes, I'm just gonna leave. I'm clocking out and I'm walking out because I'm done being the only one who cares. Some people are telling me that that's dramatic or unprofessional, professional, but I feel like it's the only way anyone's gonna take me seriously. So I need to know, would I be the jerk if I walked out next time they vanish on me again? Because right now I'm incredibly frustrated. Okay, in my opinion, I don't think this is your problem, but instead this really does need to keep going to management. And if you haven't already, I would make a paper trail immediately of all the reports you make. Walking out and clocking out is only gonna get you in trouble and probably fired. Like, that's not gonna give any benefit to you, and if anything, it's just gonna give them a reason to fire you. Like, I'm just not convinced any real change is gonna happen by doing that. So instead, I would keep reporting it to management and even go to corporate if you need to, because this kind of behavior is super frustrating. I completely get it. Here you are trying to do your job and make sure the store is run properly, and two of the people that you work with are literally missing in action. They're not doing what they're supposed to, and they're just off probably in the back hanging out. And trust me, I totally get it. That's not fair, and you should not have to deal with that. But on that same note, you should not be the person to enforce any kind of rules, and you shouldn't try to get back at them by clocking out and leaving. You're only going to risk your job, and it's only going to get you in trouble. Because if management doesn't care about Zane and Marisha literally going off and doing whatever they want, then trust me, they will not care about firing you and finding a replacement. An entitled old jerk screams at a flight attendant, all because he didn't have a place to put his stupid bag. Things got so bad that this guy almost started fighting other passengers. But thankfully, this guy got humbled in one of the best ways I've ever seen in my life. And truly, this guy absolutely deserved it. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife, my baby, and myself were all returning home from a quick trip to visit parents out of state. I board early to get the baby's car seat secured, and after that, I'm just chilling and waiting as the rest of the passengers continue boarding. As announced, the flight is a full one, so the seats are quickly filling up. Well, this old entitled jerk with a clearly disgruntled look on his face comes storming down the aisle to the back end of the plane. He then begins complaining to the flight attendant about how someone supposedly took the overhead storage bin over his seat, and he cannot fit his bag there. Now, this flight attendant is a woman who's probably in her late 40s and early 50s. She then kindly and respectfully tells him that this is a full flight, that overhead space will be limited, and is not guaranteed to be available right over your seat. She then politely suggests that he look for a different compartment to store his bag. Well, this antagonist of our story did not like hearing that. He did not like that one bit. He then begins raising his voice and responds that he needs the spot over his seat, and that it is the only way to make sure that his bag will not be stolen. But the flight attendant politely and calmly repeats her answer to him and ensures that his bag will be safe. Well, his face starts turning red with rage. He shouts at her, "This is ridiculous. That's my spot. Haven't you tried boarding from the back to the front so that everybody gets only the overhead space right over their seat?" Around this time, my wife and my baby arrive at our row, and they get a front row seat to this show from this point on. The flight attendant replies by saying, "Actually, yes. We did try that years ago and it didn't work for various reasons, so we stopped. I am asking you to please look for an open space for your bag and take your seat." Now, the old entitled jerk who was fuming at this point shouts at her about how stupid that is and how disrespectful she is being to him. He then continues on a long-winded shouting rant, and she tells him that she is trying to be as calm and respectful as she can, but there is nothing that she can do about this flight being so full. He continues ranting and raving at her right up in her face, thinking that he can get his way by dominating her until she relents. The poor flight attendant is trying her best to maintain her composure while being verbally berated by this red-faced shouting idiot. But pretty soon, it became apparent that she was on the verge of tears. Now, I would have intervened at this point had I been flying by myself, but with my baby sitting right next to me, I decided it was best to keep her out of this situation. Thankfully, the man sitting behind me stepped in. He told this guy, "Hey, how about you go look for an open spot for your bag instead of sitting here and screaming at this lady?" The entitled old jerk looked over at him with this pure hatred and fury in his eyes. He then shouts at him, "You stay out of this. This is none of your business, kid." Now, the kid in this situation, who is a bearded man in his 30s, does not back down for a second and firmly tells him to go back to his seat right now. Well, this guy, who was clearly offended that a younger man would dare tell him what to do, replies by saying, "No, what are you gonna do, fight me?" Well, the bearded man looks him right in the eyes. He says to him, "I am a retired US Marine, and you do not want to do this. Now go back to your seat right now." The entitled old jerk angrily looks down, knowing that he is defeated, his ego clearly crushed and humiliated, but still he is steaming with anger. He turns away and then stomps right back up to the front of the plane. As he gets halfway down the aisle, he stops and shouts back at the flight attendant, "Clearly, I made a mistake choosing this airline. I'm never flying with this ever again." And then he continues back to his seat. And honestly, this incident brought up so many markers for me, it's not even funny. For starters, there's such fear and paranoia and just a lack of trust in others that you can just inherently have. Also, this guy thought he knew better than people with years of experience in this industry. Also, he threw a public temper tantrum over over something so small and trivial and unimportant. He thought he was tough by targeting people that he thinks he can dominate by aggression, such as the woman flight attendant, only to then cower down as soon as any real pushback came his way. He also had this awful sense of superiority based solely on him being older than others. And of course, he just had to get the last word to give himself some kind of self-perceived victory. I guarantee that he went home, still stewing about the whole ordeal, did zero self-reflection, and thinks that he is entirely in the right about it. But this guy definitely couldn't be more wrong. Wow, what a psychopath. Seriously, just find a new spot for your bag. Is it that serious? Just because the compartment above your head is full doesn't mean you have to act like an idiot on the plane. I'm honestly really surprised this guy didn't get kicked off the plane because his behavior was seriously unacceptable. But overall, good for that one US Marine for stepping up and being like, no, you're gonna sit down. Because this entitled jerk clearly had some weird chip on his shoulder, because his behavior truly was absolutely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for going out with friends and leaving my younger sister with our grandparents, even though she begged me not to go and to spend time with her? Because after a lifetime of dealing with her spoiled, rotten attitude, I honestly just wanted some time to myself and away from my sister. Here's what happened. Last weekend, my parents went to a wedding, and they left me, a 16-year-old male, and my sister, who's 11, with our grandparents. My parents wanted us to come with them, and my sister wanted to go to the wedding and got dressed up and all this other stuff, but my sister isn't known for behaving good, and the friends who were getting married didn't want her there as a result. So my parents were in a bad mood, and my sister was upset. Now, my parents coddle my sister a lot. She acts really babyish because she's treated like one by them, and they make me act like it too. In fact, I'm supposed to be soft and caring with her. They'll make me do stuff with her because she wants to, and it seriously doesn't matter what I'm doing. They interrupted me during homework to go drive with her and mom to some extracurricular activity that she was doing, all because my sister wanted me in the car. They make me give her hugs if she wants them, even if I don't want to, and I even have to hold her hand if she wants to hold mine. They even took the lock off my door at home, so I'd need to let her sleep in my room if she wanted to. And stuff like this is just completely normal for us, and saying no doesn't do anything. My grandparents have said they go too far as well, but my parents just completely brush it off. Now, my sister doesn't like sleeping anywhere but our house, so she hated the idea of going to our grandparents' house. And yes, we would have stayed at a hotel if we joined our parents for the wedding, so don't ask me how that worked out. But after our parents dropped us off, my sister was being super clingy with me, and she wanted us to do stuff together the entire day, and be home with her to put her to bed. My grandparents knew my friends wanted to meet up, so they gave me money and sent me out for the day, and I was out all the way until late at night. Now, my sister begged me not to go. She cried and threw a fit, and continued after I left. When I got home, she still wasn't asleep, but my grandparents made sure I could stay in my room alone and let me lock the door. Well, my parents were so pissed off when they picked us up, and my sister was still upset. And my grandparents told my parents that they should be ashamed for letting it get that bad. My parents then told me that I should be ashamed, all for leaving my sister in distress like that. And then they asked me where my love was for my baby sister, with a strong emphasis on the baby part. So am I the jerk for spending time with my friends without my sister being involved? What should I do? Okay, in my opinion, the second they ask you, oh, where's your love for your baby sister? That would have left my body the second they took the lock off my door. Like, are you kidding me right now? You have no privacy. Your parents are insane for the way they're babying your little sister, and it absolutely is obnoxious. She's 11 years old. She's not a child. So for her to still be acting like this is insane, and it 100% falls on your parents for encouraging this. Like, this kid is completely spoiled. I mean, she literally gets whatever she wants and basically runs that house. Like, your grandparents are right. Your parents should be ashamed for letting it get this bad. So no, of course you didn't do anything wrong. My God, if I was in your shoes, I would be counting the days until I could move out, because this kind of behavior is not normal. And while it may seem normal on your end since you're living through it, trust me when I say this is not the way a family is supposed to act. Am I the jerk for paying for my kid's class trip when my kid's stepsister and stepcousin can't go with them? Because right now, my ex is demanding that I pay for all the kids to go on this trip, claiming that if I don't do this, the kids will start hating each other, and that will be entirely my fault. Here's what happened. So my ex and I are both 30 years old, and we separated after the birth of our twins 8 years ago. We had only dated for 14 months when she got pregnant, and we only stayed together during the pregnancy because we wanted to try and be a family for our kids' sake. But she met someone else and fell for him and wanted to have a chance at love, and our separation was amicable enough. We co-parented well for the first 2 years, but when she met her husband, who is, by the way, different than the guy she fell in love with during our relationship, trip, things completely changed. He was a single father and a sole provider for his daughter, who was the same age as our kids. And she actually declared that I would be responsible for including her like she was my child too if I was buying gifts or doing anything fun with our kids. This started us on a bad path, and now we parallel parent instead of co-parent because I was expected to babysit her stepkid when I wanted to have fun with my kids, and I was supposed to spend equally across all kids for gifts. Now, my ex and I have 50-50 custody, and nobody pays any child support because we both have our kids an equal amount of time. My kids and I are very close. I do not include the other children at their mom's house when I have them, and I do not interact with those other children. 3 years ago, their stepdad's nephew moved in with them, and a year later, their mom and stepdad had a baby daughter together, so they now have a stepsister, a step-cousin, and a half-sister at that house. And my ex is potentially expecting again. This is partially where the fight comes from. The school the kids go to is small, so they're in the same class as the step-siblings, and they have a class trip coming in November to an interactive museum. It is expensive for a class trip at their age, but I can afford it, and the kids want to go, so I paid for it. But my ex was pissed off at me. She and her husband can't afford to send the stepdaughter and nephew, and my ex told me that I should either pay for all 4 of them to go, or all 4 could just miss it entirely. But I said to her no. I told her I have the right to pay for them to go, and the trip falls during my parenting time, so I can send them. Her husband then told me I was sabotaging their family, and I was being a jerk to kids who get to see their family go on the class trip that they themselves can't be a part of. He told me that I should care more about all of the kids, and my ex backed him up, of course, and said that the kids hating each other will be all on me. So am I the jerk in this situation with the way I'm handling my ex's kids? Because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. This is insane. You're only obligated to the twins that you had between you and your ex. So for her to be like, okay, well, while we're at it, here's some extra kids for you to take care of. You need to pay for all their stuff. Sorry, that's just the way it is. It's like, lady, that's not happening. I'm only obligated to take care of my kids and my kids only. Like, the entitlement I'm seeing from her is completely unacceptable. And it's so divisive too, because she's trying to be like, oh, if these kids hate each other, that's on you. But in reality, that's going to be on her, because where's that hatred going to come from? It's not going to come from those kids. It's going to come from those parents. They will be the ones to tell them that, yes, this is wrong and you should be upset. So no, you're not doing anything wrong, and you're literally just trying to raise your kids in the best way possible, because in my opinion, I don't think you've done anything wrong. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that I don't want to take the same flights as her for my honeymoon? Because after we found out that we would be going to the same city the day after my wedding, we decided that we wanted some privacy, which has now completely thrown a wrench in my social life, leaving me unsure of what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old female, and I'm getting married very soon and planning to go to Barcelona for my honeymoon, which is something I really thought I told my best friend. Well, a few days ago, my 30-year-old female friend told me that she's planning a trip to Barcelona the day after my wedding, which I was initially taken aback by, since I thought that she had planned this knowing that I was going. My friend has joked before about tagging along to my honeymoon and really feels clingy at times, which has been noted and commented on by other friends. She made it clear that she didn't know about my plans, but that she still will go ahead with her plans. Now, I would prefer if this wasn't the case, but I can't stop her from going to that part of the world. From previous encounters, I anticipate that she will want to spend time with us while we are there, and I can foresee her feeling offended if we don't. I then suggested to my friend that if we are all going at the same time, that my husband and I are going to book different flights, and express that I would not feel comfortable being on the exact same flights. Fast forward, and after our conversation, I get a phone call from my other friend asking me what I've done to make my best friend upset. She was upset by the comment that I made about feeling uncomfortable with taking the same flights and can't understand what about that makes me uncomfortable. She says that I've made her feel as though she's done something wrong, hence why I'm avoiding being in the same airplane as her. Now, this was really surprising to me, and now my best friend doesn't want to speak to me, and my second friend is seemingly on my best friend's side and says that I should apologize. So right now, I feel so confused. I feel as though I am justified in wanting to take separate flights, and I don't want to dismiss my friend's feelings, but I'm struggling to understand her reaction. What should I do? No, you're not the jerk here. Both of your friends in this story are being just super weird. The lady that's going to Barcelona is seriously trying to be like, oh, let's go on the same flight. And it seems like you already know her pattern of behavior, so she's going to be all over you guys during your honeymoon. And it's like, seriously, this is supposed to be like a private endeavor, and you don't want to have anybody else there that could, like, I don't know, spoil the mood. So in my opinion, it makes total sense that you would want to take separate flights, because this is not a group vacation. This is meant for you and your husband and only the two of you. So taking separate flights is not a shot at her, but more so it's just you prioritizing categorizing the two of you. And for this second friend to get involved and be like, wow, you need to apologize. Like, what is she talking about? You didn't do anything. You literally just said, hey, we're gonna take separate flights so this can feel like a private experience. And if your first friend really wants to be offended by this and be like, I don't know what I did wrong, then sure, let her feel offended. Who gives a crap? Maybe that's just me, but the way she's acting is so irrational that I just don't think any logical conversation is gonna get through to her. So no, you didn't do anything wrong. This is such a weird thing to be mad about. And in my opinion, I wouldn't think anything more about this because the way your friends are acting is completely out of the ordinary. Am I the jerk for flipping out on my mom after she talked to my 6-year-old son and convinced him that he would be an older brother and that we're going to have another child? Because right now we are incredibly upset as this is not only categorically false, but also incredibly toxic. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife and I have one child together, a 6-year-old son. When we got married, we agreed we both only wanted one child. A few years ago, my wife got her tubes tied, and I also got a vasectomy last year just to cover all bases across the board. We didn't announce this to the family, but it also wasn't a secret. We have had a few people ask if we're having another one, and that's usually when it comes up. Now, I am one of 6 siblings, and our mother was one of 8 kids. Most of our siblings had at least 3 children, if not a lot more. And the only other person in my family that has one and done is my brother. Our mother struggles to accept this and has said several times that we will change our minds. Even knowing that my wife and I physically cannot have more children, she will always bring up adoption or say that my procedure could be reversed and all this other stuff. But my brother and I always shut it down and have told her, amongst other things, that we are not changing our minds. Recently, she was babysitting my son while my wife and I went out. We picked him up afterwards, and on the car ride home, out of nowhere, my son started crying and asking if we were having another baby, and we just said to him no. He then said that his grandmother kept asking him if he wanted a baby sister and saying that we should have another baby and that he could be a big helper. Well, we got home rather quickly and we consoled him and promised him that we were not having another baby and that his grandmother never should have told him this. I then called my mom and got on her about all of this, telling her that she stooped low by getting our son involved. She said that we're overreacting and him crying over potentially getting another sibling is ridiculous and that we are raising a spoiled child. But I argued no. He is a sensitive kid who doesn't do great with change, and she scared him with the things she said. So I told her that until I can trust that she won't say these things to him, her babysitting privileges have been revoked, and she will only be around him if my wife and I are there. Now, my brother backs me up on this because apparently our mother tried the same thing with his son, and it led to a similar argument on their end. But our sisters think that we're overreacting, and that this is a natural question, and my mom is right that it should not have upset my child so much. So am I the jerk for flipping out on my mom in the way that I did? Because right now I am still incredibly angry. Okay, wow, this is crazy talk. She cannot do that to somebody else's kid. She literally went to this kid and was like, oh, are you ready for a baby sister? You get to be an older brother. Are you ready for that? Like, she did not pose some kind of like hypothetical scenario where this kid's gonna be an older brother one day. She straight up said, oh, you're gonna be a big brother, and seriously put the idea in this 6-year-old's head that yeah, you're about to have another kid in the family. And that is so wrong. That is so messed up. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and your sisters and anybody else who's justifying this, in my opinion, are completely out of their minds. My entitled sister-in-law thinks that just because she has kids, she is somehow entitled to have the family cabin all winter long. Here's what happened. Okay, so my grandparents own a cabin that's near a ski resort about an hour and a half from where we live. It was used a lot when I was a kid by most of my family, but there was a couple-year gap when all of my generation moved away for school that it sat empty. In the last few years, more of us have moved back and started using the cabin, and it was easy to share as only 5 of us use it, and we are all considerate that it is a family-owned place, so we message each other about availability and what essentials like cleaning supplies need to be replaced. Well, this all changed with my brother, his wife, and 3 kids. My sister-in-law has always claimed to hate the place because it's not for entertainment, it's mostly a place for a few people to crash on a ski trip. So last year, she put her kids on the ski team and went around the rest of the cousins to my grandparents directly, saying that she wants to use it more often. My grandparents were okay with this, telling them that as long as it's not reserved by others, they can use it. She then proceeded to reserve every weekend that winter, and she didn't even use half of them. When I asked about getting a weekend, she was really weird about it over the phone. So I visited her to find a free weekend, and when I asked her about every weekend being booked, she said to me, "We don't want it every weekend. We just want the ability to go every week, and we don't want to decide until that Friday." And she said that with a straight face, expecting it to be normal. Well, I reached out to the other cousins that use it, and I found out that everyone had gotten a similar response response from her, and most had just moved back to town and assumed that was normal because she's the only one with kids. We then went to my grandparents as a group and explained the situation, and as a result, they changed the policy. Now each of us gets an even amount of weekends that we can swap with each other if we wanted. Well, when this happened, that really pissed off my sister-in-law, and she has now been frantically calling all of us trying to get our weekends, saying stuff like, oh, she already invited friends for specific weekends, or that her kids need to be there on certain dates. When that failed, she started texting all of us, demanding that we not go on our weekends. Well, we all got the text together and went over to our grandparents. Now, our sister-in-law can only use the place if she gets confirmation that none of us will be there, which by the way, basically means she's never gonna be there. Now, she is still freaking out, but it has gotten my cousins and I closer, as we have all agreed to be adults about it and just talk to each other when a conflict arises. Now, for a bit of context, this is not an Airbnb or anything like that. I check every year, and there is a nearby cabin that is on Airbnb that we ourselves have used if a large group wants to go up, meaning that she could be doing this under the table with friends, but I really think it's more about clout. Also, my brother doesn't get involved. He sees himself as above these petty squabbles, but my sister-in-law is definitely parroting his opinions. I mean, I don't think she would do this without his agreement. My grandparents are also incredible. These aren't big blowouts with them, and they are 2 to 3 minute parts of longer visits. We are mostly adults, and we can discuss this stuff quickly and calmly with them. So honestly, I'm so sick of my sister-in-law, and hopefully this all gets better sooner than later. Yeah, your sister-in-law sounds super entitled. Who in their right mind would be like, oh, we don't know when we want to go, so we're just gonna book every weekend just to be safe? It's like, what are you doing? You can't do that. That literally cuts everybody out of the family of going to this cabin that, by the way, is not even yours. Like, this is the very definition of taking advantage of someone else's property. So truly, I think your sister-in-law really needs to get a grip because her behavior is completely unacceptable. My psycho mom brings my ex-girlfriend to my wedding reception as her last-ditched effort to dump my bride that I literally just married so that I would get back together with my awful, controlling, and very toxic ex-girlfriend. But as a result, I kicked my mom and my ex-girlfriend out of my wedding reception, causing massive drama in my family and in my life. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I started seeing a woman who we will call June about 3 years ago. My mother has never really liked June for a couple of reasons. The main one being the fact that June didn't let my mom push her around. She kept firm boundaries, which I really admired, and she even helped me do the same. Now, my mom hated this, calling June controlling and wishing that I had not broken up with my previous girlfriend, who we will call Margot, who, by the way, my mom absolutely loved. But I was with Margot for 5 years and it was horrible. Margot was very controlling and manipulative and always guilted me into things I wasn't comfortable with. But thanks to support from friends and my sister, I was able to leave her. It was hard, but I had help, and my life has improved ever since. My mom was very upset with this, but relationships didn't last, so she eventually let it go until I started dating June. When June and I announced our engagement, my mom didn't freak out, which was weird considering my mom hates June. She was very calm, but I just took it like she was finally accepting this, and so I didn't think much of it. Everything was fine and smooth all the way up until the wedding. I gave both my parents +1s to the wedding since they both remarried after I graduated college. So I'm not close to their spouses, but I gave them the option of inviting them. We had a very small ceremony, just immediate family and a few close friends. After the ceremony, me and June went to take pictures and then met back up with everyone we invited to the reception, which was pretty big. And when we got there, my sister and June's best friend, who was also the maid of honor, ran up to us in a panic. And before they even said anything, I spotted it. My mom was at a table with my dad, my dad's wife, and Margot. Now, I wanted to freak out, but June kept me calm. I walked over, pulled them aside, and simply told them they had to leave. My mom tried to explain that Margot and I are soulmates, and June is just in the way of true love, but I wasn't hearing it. I just didn't care. So I got my best friends to escort them out, and I returned to the party where luckily, after a few moments, I was able to relax and enjoy it. I really didn't think this would all turn into something huge, but June and I just got back from our honeymoon where we didn't have our phones, and once I saw mine, I saw hundreds of text messages from multiple family members. They all seriously think that I was the jerk for kicking my mom out of her only son's wedding. For the record, she was there for the ceremony, but apparently was really upset she was kicked from the reception. Now, if I were to summarize some of my family's thoughts on this, some think that I could have just ignored Margot and didn't have to freak out in the way that I did, even though I was relatively calm thanks to June, but a few others, including my dad, think that I should have just kicked Margot out and let my mom stay, but after the stunt my mom pulled, I didn't want her there either. I'm now starting to second guess myself since everyone is really mad. June and my sister are on my side, but I fear my dad may be right, and I should have just let my mom stay and made Margot leave. So am I the one at fault here? What should I do? No, this is crazy. Like seriously, there is nothing good about this. You mean to tell me that your mom brought your ex-girlfriend to your wedding reception and tried to convince you as some last-ditched effort that this lady is actually your soulmate and June is just in the way. And we're talking about someone who was manipulative and controlling and just guilt-tripped you into everything and was just an awful girlfriend overall. Like that's insane and incredibly toxic. And your mom didn't bring her to try and convince you that, oh my god, this is your soulmate. She only did that because she hates June. She wanted one last shot at you, all because she can't control you in the way that she's done before. Like think about it, June's basically like taken a step forward and said, no, you're not going to treat me like garbage. And she's helped you do the same in the face of your awful mother. And if this is the kind of stuff that she's doing at your wedding reception, God only knows the way she's treated you earlier in life. Like this is some crazy behavior and there is no good excuse for that. So yes, she absolutely deserved to get kicked out of your wedding reception. Both your mom and Margot can take a hike because what she did was toxic and very targeted. And in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for shaming my sister after she got pregnant with someone who is categorically a complete deadbeat? Because right now she's angry with me for telling the truth. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female and I have a twin sister who we will call Ashley, and we've always been very close. And she started dating this guy a year ago who we will call Jared. Jared is 32 years old. I never really liked him, but my sister was head over heels in love with him and said that she wanted to marry him. Well, this summer, I was at a grocery store when a woman with 3 kids came up to me in the aisle and asked if I was Ashley. I said no and was about to say that we're twins when she cut me off and said, yes, you are. You're dating my deadbeat baby daddy and want to follow my pages leaving hate comments saying he chose you over us and to move on. How heartless are you? And I was like, what are you talking about? I am not Ashley. I'm her twin sister. And then I asked if she was talking about Jared. She then said yes and showed me the screenshots of my sister DMing her saying that Jared is now hers and that he doesn't claim those kids and all this other stuff. Now, I was very uncomfortable, but I knew in my gut that he was a weirdo. I was so shocked that my sister would not only date a deadbeat, but also proudly, even knowing how our father being a deadbeat sent us both to therapy. After this, I just walked away. And a few days later, I asked my sister, and she denied it at first, but then admitted it, saying she didn't tell me that he had kids, since I personally don't date men with kids, and she didn't want me to judge her. But I told her I was judging the fact that he's a deadbeat, not a father of any kind. As a result, we've argued about it a lot, and I've now looked at her very differently ever since. Fast forward to this week, and she invites me over. Then her and Jared tell me that she's pregnant, and that they're both so happy, but I was just sitting there silently and just kept eating. She then asked me why I was acting like a jerk, and why I'm not happy to be an aunt, and I said, well, because of this, and then I gestured over to Jared. He then got mad and said, what's your problem with me? And I said, well, it's because you're a deadbeat. After I said that, they both got quiet. He then said to me, that doesn't mean that I'll be one for this kid. And at that point, I just laughed and got up to leave. I'm then in the hallway on the way to the elevator when my sister comes running up behind me and keeps asking why I'm being so rude while she's also sobbing. So I told her the truth. I said that she should be ashamed to be pregnant by a guy that abandoned his other kids, knowing that this is what happened to us, and that she's disgusting and a loser, and he's gonna leave her like he did his ex. She then said that I don't know the full story, and she can't believe that I would not be supportive in this time of her life, and that the baby has half my DNA too. Now, I felt bad and said I would try to be there for her, but she will realize what a mistake she made, and then I walked away. She's now texting me saying that she wants me to come back and apologize to Jared, and I just straight up refused. Well, as a result, she said that she doesn't want to speak to me if I don't apologize to them. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk here. I think your sister needed some tough love, and the fact that she's completely missing the point of all of this, in my opinion, shows that she might be a little too far down the river for you to help her. Because I think the original poster is 100% correct. Jared is absolutely going to leave the sister in this story, and that is such a shame because there's evidence of it happening already. And it's so funny because this guy even admits to being a deadbeat, and he says, oh, I'm not going to do that with these kids, basically implying him saying, yeah, you're right. So no, you're not the jerk for telling the truth, because honestly, your sister is about to have her heart broken. Am I the jerk for telling off my parents after they prioritize my sister once again over anything I might do with my life? life. Because right now I'm very frustrated and I seriously cannot wait to move out in 2 years. Here's what happened. I'm a 16-year-old male and my parents have me and my sister. When we were younger, things were okay. But then when she was 7 years old, she got bullied by a kid in her class. The bullying didn't last long, but afterwards she changed. She struggled with her self-esteem and she still feels bad about herself and hates herself. And it made our parents go into protective mode. They let her choose where to go for takeout for a month afterwards, and they canceled what we had talked about for my birthday party and instead decided that we all needed a family vacation instead. But she got to pick the location even though we went for my birthday, and I just didn't have any fun. My parents knew that I wouldn't like it. They told me that she needed this, and we needed to help pick her up. They told me I could spend time with friends another day and do something small with them. Well, that never happened even though I asked them. She was still in a bad place after a few months, and then my dad went no contact with his mom because she decided she was going to leave all of her grandkids something, but my sister, the only granddaughter, was not included, and she said some nasty stuff about boys being more special to her. And by the way, all of this was in front of my sister, which, let's be honest, is a really messed up thing to do to my sister, but it made my parents really go crazy, and they basically put my sister first in everything. It was more of the same where she got to make decisions for all of us, and I didn't get the chance to do it ever. And the few times I would make plans with friends, my sister just wanted me around, and my parents would ask me to put her first and cancel my plans. Now, a couple of times I said no, but my parents made me cancel anyways, and it just keeps getting worse too, and it still happens. A few months ago, I told them that stuff was pushing me away because I felt less important and less cared for by them. I also told them that I felt like my sister got to make too many decisions for me. I told them I was so ready to just move away and get away from them. And sure, that really hurt, but it all feels like this is my sister's family instead of mine. They said they were sorry, and they told me that they would do better. They would get my sister a better therapist to help her so we could all just move on. Well, fast forward, and I had plans to go to a Halloween party with friends next week. And my sister also had plans with friends, but after a panic attack, they canceled on her and mocked her about the panic attack. She asked our parents if we could go away that same weekend and spend some time as a family. So my parents asked me to cancel my plans and go. And they tried to apologize, but I just said forget it. I told them to forget making it up to me because I don't believe them and I'm just completely done. I'll do what they want and I'll just suck it up for 2 more years and then I'm gonna walk away because I'm so done. At that point, I would not hear my parents out and they got increasingly frustrated with me. So am I the jerk in this situation for all the things that went down? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all. Your parents are clearly showing favoritism towards your sister and it's negatively affecting your life. Like, why on earth should you have to stay home all because your sister is having a panic attack? Like, if they want to take care of her and help her out during these moments, then sure, that's fine. But for you to cancel all your plans all the time to stay home with your family and be there for your sister seems really overboard and like so uncalled for, because this is just super intrusive. She's already dictating everything in the house. Now she's basically deciding when you can come and go from your own home that you live in. So truly, I don't blame you for the way that you feel, because your parents are absolutely enabling this behavior, and this is not fair in the slightest. My entitled manager made an all-encompassing policy that literally hindered just about everything we were trying to do at our office. So I decided to maliciously comply, showing to him once and for all exactly why this policy's stupid, and eventually getting things changed back to the way that they were. Here's what happened. So I work in a small office, and just like a lot of companies, we've got that one manager who's obsessed with cutting the cost. Ours is someone that we will call Mark. Now, Mark wasn't a bad guy, but he had this laser focus on reducing expenses, no matter how small it might be, and one of his biggest obsessions was paper. He was convinced that we were blowing our budget on printing, so he implemented a new policy. Everything had to be double-sided. And this wasn't a suggestion, it was a hard rule. Mark sent an email to everyone in the office, even tagging the human resources department, to literally make this official. He said the following: "From this point forward, all printing must be double-sided. No exceptions. If we catch unnecessary single-sided printing, there will be consequences." Now, most of us didn't see it as a big deal for internal documents, but there were times that it was a problem. We regularly worked with contracts and legal forms, as well as client documents, things that, for whatever reason, often had to be single-sided. A few of us raised concerns about this with Mark, but his response was always the same: "Rules are rules. Double-sided saves us money. Stick to the policy." So this is where we decided to maliciously comply. A couple weeks later, we got a massive contract from one of our biggest clients. Let's call him Green Tech. The deal was huge, easily one of the biggest projects we've handled all year, and it came with a lot of paperwork. The instructions from Green Tech were crystal clear. The contract had to be printed single-sided to meet their legal department standards. Now, I figured this might be one of those rare cases where Mark would have made an exception, so I went to him and I explained the situation and I showed him the client's instructions. But Mark just shrugged his shoulders. He said to me, "Company policy is company policy. We're not wasting paper. You're gonna make it double-sided." Well, at this point, I knew where this was headed, but whatever, that's totally fine. I followed the rules. I printed the entire 80-page contract double-sided, and then I sent it off to the client. A couple of days later, we get an email from Green Tech, and they were not pleased. In fact, they were asking us to reprint the whole thing, single-sided this time, or they would reconsider doing business with us. When I showed the email to Mark, his face turned red. He had no choice but to backtrack and scramble to fix the mess. We ended up having to reprint the entire contract correctly and overnight ship it to Green Tech, which ended up costing us more in fees than the printing savings that Mark had been so focused on. But the best part about this was that after that fiasco, Mark quietly rolled back the no exceptions rule for double-sided printing, and we were allowed to use our judgment on a case-by-case basis. And it's funny how just a little bit of malicious compliance with bad policies can show someone exactly why they don't work in a practice. Yeah, I can't stand managers who are like, "Oh, this is a no exceptions or a zero tolerance policy," because that kind of language very rarely translates into anything like doable. If anything, it just restricts everybody around you from doing anything in the company, and then moments like this come up and you're just like, "Wait a second, I thought you said no exception." And then suddenly there's an exception and it's like, "Wait a second, I could have made this decision for us." So I love the fact that the original poster was like, "Okay, let's get petty. I'm gonna maliciously comply and make you realize why this policy is really stupid." And seriously, sometimes that's exactly what it takes. So good for you for sticking it to him and showing him exactly why this is really dumb. Because Mark in this story was going completely overboard. Am I the jerk for not letting my inheritance be used on my step and half siblings, all because I'm not going to college, and according to my mom, it would be put to better use with them instead of me? Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 17-year-old male, and I won't be going to college after high school, because instead, I'm going to be learning a trade. I feel like it works better for my skills, and generally would be a better job for me. My mom isn't super happy about it, but she knows college has been pushed on me for almost 2 years, and my mind has not changed. So she has accepted that she won't change my mind, and nobody will. But here's why my post is here in the first place. My dad passed away when I was 6 years old. When he was 9, his mom passed away, and it was all due to medical negligence and malpractice. And my grandfather, uncle, and dad were awarded compensation, and it was a huge amount after her death. My grandfather split it between my dad and my uncle. He was working and received Social Security benefits for them because grandma passed away, and he knew that she'd want them to be taken care of above everything else. When my dad realized that he was sick, he made sure that money would go to me, his only kid. He set it up in a trust fund and left my grandfather and my uncle in charge of it. The money is a lot. Like, I could easily be debt-free going to college with it, and then have some left over if I was smart about it. My mom also knew about the money but couldn't access it. Now, my mom has been married to her husband for 9 years, and my parents were separated when my dad passed away. Her husband has a son who's a year younger than me, and he has a medical condition. My mom also has 2 kids with her husband. Because of my stepbrother's medical condition and his mom not being in his life or his mom's family, they don't really have any savings for his college anymore. And that's because they had to spend it on some medical stuff. And my half-siblings have absolutely nothing either. Well, my mom and her husband think that since I have the money and that I won't be using it for college, I should just give it to my stepbrother and my half-siblings, and then let them pay it back if I insist. But they say that I could just give it to them as a way to help them with their futures, and this way I would be a good brother. But you know what? I said no, and I told them that I wouldn't change my mind. My mom asked why, and I said that it's my inheritance from my dad. I could buy a house with it, or even protect my future with it. I could save it for my future kids, but I don't want to risk it not being paid back when it was my dad's way of securing my future. Well, she told me that he would want me to do this, and I asked her if she really thinks that he would want the money he got from losing his mom to be used on random kids that aren't me. She then told me that they're not random to me, so yes, she believes that he would want me to be a good brother, and she told me I should really give it more consideration. So am I at fault here for saying no? What should I do? No, you're not at fault. This is insane. Your mom is only asking for your money because she doesn't have any to give to her kids. And sure, that really sucks, but guess what? That's why student loans are created. Like, if they seriously want to go to college, then they can take out loans and go that way. Why should you have to finance their college career? It's not like you're not going to use that money. You're going to buy a house, you're going to spend it on stuff that you need. So for them to be like, oh, just use it on them, give it to them, be a good brother, this is what your dead dad would want you to do. Like, all that's just manipulation because they just don't want to pay for it. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and the fact that your mom would pull that kind of move, in my opinion, opinion is super toxic. Am I the jerk for not getting rid of my cats just to accommodate my pregnant best friend who's living with me at the moment? Here's what happened. I'm a 22-year-old female and I have lived alone since the beginning of this year in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. I have one cat who is my pet, but I also volunteer with a local cat rescue organization. It's fairly often that I temporarily foster cats or kittens, anywhere from just one night to up to 2 weeks at most. And this is until we can clear them to be placed in our shelter, or with another foster family, or they can be adopted. Usually I take in one foster at a time, but at times it's 2 of them if they are siblings and they are bonded. Recently, this summer, my best friend, who we will call Christy, moved in with me because she was on very bad terms with her mom and stepdad, who she was previously living with, and it was safer for her to move out. Now, I of course offered her to stay with me, and she's been in the spare bedroom ever since. However, last month, Christy found out that she's pregnant from her boyfriend. They have a plan to get their own place as soon as possible, she says, but I truly don't mind if she stays here as long as she needs. Now, given that she's pregnant, when she told her mom last week, her mom wanted to come over and talk things over. So she came here on Tuesday, and they privately talked for about 2 hours. When they came out, it seemed like it was a good chat, and they were more relaxed overall. But her mom kind of turned her attention towards me and said, "If Christy's going to be living here, you need to do something about the cats." And I asked what she meant, and she mentioned toxoplasmosis, the litter boxes, the number of cats here, etc. And then she started getting an attitude towards me when she said, "You guys should have thought of this already." I then let her know that we did actually, and there's an extremely low to no risk of toxoplasmosis. I only have one cat, which is my own, in the main house, who doesn't even go into Christy's room. Christy also has zero obligations or responsibilities for my cats, and this is something I let her know about the minute that she moved in. All the litter boxes are cleaned minimum twice daily, and they aren't even anywhere near Christy. My cat's litter box is kept in the garage, where there is a cat door that she can go in and out of, and any foster cats that I have are kept in my master bedroom. It's a large bathroom, and it's adapted to be safe for a temporary foster. The only interaction Christy has is if she happens to be in the living room or in the hallway or kitchen with my cat at the same time, so contact is extremely limited. I also want to add that all cats I foster are up to date on their vaccines, they're spayed or neutered, and they're exclusively indoor cats only. After explaining all of this to Christy's mom, I told her that at most I would be willing to possibly limit the fosters I bring in, but I will absolutely not be getting rid of my cat. She then told me, "Well, yours is the biggest risk here." She also tried to suggest that I should stop volunteering with cats altogether up until Christy can move out or until the baby is born. Christy tried interrupting her mom to calm her down because she kept going on about how I'm being selfish, how I'm not realizing that she's carrying another life right now, and that apparently I'm not even considering the risks that are associated with it. But given their relationship, she was very on edge with her mom, which I totally understand. Now, I love my best friend, but I will not be getting rid of my pet in my own home that was here before she was. I'm willing to adapt and limit fosters, but I genuinely do not think that I'm risking anyone's health here, and I don't want to stop volunteering. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk. Christy's mom is being super irrational, and she's not being fair in the slightest. Like seriously, you know these cats better than anybody else, and you know that she's not going to be anywhere near those cats in the first place. So no, you are definitely not the jerk, because this is absolutely avoidable. My entitled mom expects me to buy a house that's closer to her, all because she doesn't want to drive 20 minutes to see me and her grandchild. Here's what happened. So when me and my fiance met, we hit it off very fast because we were very much on the same wavelength. And by chance, we live close to one another, so we could easily spend lots of time together. So after just 6 months, I was ready to move into her apartment with my dog. But sadly, the landlord said no because of said dog. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise because we realized that buying a condo would cost almost as much as buying a house, especially considering the current market in Canada. So we ended up looking for a house. My first instinct was to search around where I grew up, which is where my mom is, because there's lots of parks around, which made my childhood pretty awesome with my friends. Very rapidly though, it became evident that our budget of $575,000 maximum, with renovations included, would not allow it. I tried literally 100 times to explain to her that borrowing $25,000 from her would make a difference in our options, but she shot me down every time and laughed at me when I insinuated that we wouldn't be able to buy in her neighborhood. I never asked her for a gift. I always said that I would pay her back, but the intent behind the loan was to keep us more easily above water for the first few years. So anyways, I ended up finding a home last year within our budget, and shockingly, it was on the island of Montreal, which is where I work, which is something that the both of us thought we would never be able to find. The house is fairly old but spacious, with a backyard and with enough rooms to have 2 2 kids. But when my mom learned about this, she freaked out. I would describe for the first time in my life her attitude to be purely toxic. She hated that house and essentially said it was a mistake and proceeded to insult everything about it, and basically by proxy, I guess, called me a dumb idiot for buying it in every conceivable way without directly saying it. She wanted me to be 5 minutes away, but now I'm 20 minutes away, making that at least a 45-minute drive during rush hours. Now, in over a year, she has only stayed for dinner once. Each time I invite her, I get a no with an excuse as to why she can't make it. She often calls me on the weekend for me to come over to her place with the baby, but when I boomerang the invite back to her by saying something like, "Hey, it's been a while, how about you come over to my place?" I'm usually told, "Oh, I'll see if I can do that. I have gardening to do and all this other stuff in the backyard." And wouldn't you guess it, it usually ends up with her not coming at all. Fast forward, and we had brunch last weekend, and I heard her complain that she doesn't see her granddaughter enough. So I pointed out to her that we said she's literally welcome to drop in at any time, not just on the weekends. But she said that she obviously couldn't come on weekdays because she works. Now, my mom is 68 years old. She has worked 45 years at the same hospital as a secretary. She's the oldest worker there and has her pension fully paid off with lots of days off. And she has a boss that loves her. So that basically means she can take an afternoon or a day off to spend time here anytime that she wants to. So I pointed that out, and she said she's not that kind of person to leave her coworkers in the dirt all by taking days off, which is super ironic for her to say because she literally just came back from a 2-week vacation in Greece. So at this point, I finally snapped back. I said that she'll be able to see her grandchild more often the day that she's not the last priority behind her coworkers, her job, her gardening, a sunny day in her backyard, and a 20-minute drive. And after I said that, she seemed incredibly insulted. Now, fast forward to yesterday, and she sent me a listing for a home 5 minutes away from hers. She said to me, "If you're interested, there's a house for sale that's about $500,000, and you can look at it if you want." But I'm just like, no? Why would we get back into that boat looking for a new house similar to what we already have just 1 year after buying this one? We will buy when we have enough to buy a house with a second floor, and only if we feel the house is too small with 2 kids. She then says to me, "It has 3 rooms on the same floor, 2 bathrooms that are renovated. It's not quite similar since you have more money to invest. But you know what? I just wanted to have a look, so fine, I'll mind my own business. Have a good day." And it's like, are you kidding me? You mean to tell me that she wouldn't loan me $25,000, but instead expects me to spend $500,000 on her so that she doesn't have to drive to see her grandchildren? My father and my fiance's family all live further away from her, but they all come around way more often. So honestly, I'm so annoyed by my mom, and I seriously now don't know what to do. Yeah, this all comes down to the fact that your mom is being super lazy, and she didn't get her way when you guys were buying your house. And also, by the way, you guys have a house in Montreal. That's a massive city, and that is not an easy place to find a house. So the fact that you even found one is incredible. So truly, I think the way you're handling this is completely fine because your mom is being super selfish, and you and your family do not deserve that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today, I messed up by stealing more caramel sauce cans from a restaurant than any one person could consume in a dozen lifetimes, resulting in me trying to find some way to destroy the evidence as I had literally committed a felony in the process. Here's what happened. So when I was a teenager, I used to live not far from a McDonald's. I was on the high school swim team, and practices were held at the horrible hour of 5 o'clock in the morning. My parents were less enthusiastic about dropping me off that early, so I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to ride my bike there. Cutting through a gap in the fence of the McDonald's store parking lot saved me a couple of blocks, so I would force my bike through the hedge and go on my sad, lonely way. There were several days where I would see huge stacks of buns and other stuff outside the store side entrance. I don't know if there was some kind of drop-off from the trucks or daily delivery or whatever, but I suppose that the delivery was only for the non-perishables. There must have been some other arrangement for the meat, eggs, produce, and all the other stuff. Now, the timing was odd, but maybe the truck had an early route, and that was the first store. I mean, it's hard to say, but for reasons that will become pretty obvious, I never asked about it. One day, I noticed the stack of supply pallets that had a bunch of number 10 cans on them. When I got closer, I saw the label identifying them as the gooey caramel sauce that McDonald's used for their sundaes. And I used to love that stuff. It was awesome. Now, it being about 4 o'clock in the morning, my brain wasn't working all that well. So I decided I would take one of them with me to school, and me and my teammates would eat it with a spoon, which would be like the best day ever. But right then, I had a thought. What if we eat all of the syrup? That would leave none for me when I had ice cream at home. I mean, who was I to deny my family their share of tasty caramel sundaes. So this was my solution. Zip on home and get something more cargo capable than a tricked out Schwinn with a banana seat and chopper handlebars. In all of 5 minutes, our family's Dodge Dart was loaded with 10 cans of caramel syrup. So I drove it home, made as little noise as I could unloading and hiding the cans, and then I booked it back to school on my bike. Now, stealing what was probably a couple of months worth of sundae topping for a single McDonald's is probably enough to qualify as a mess up, but I found that this form expects consequences, even if they are not all that consequential. Well, in this case, there were several. The first thing that I realized after successfully pulling off the one and only heist of my abbreviated criminal career was that you really couldn't open one of these cans without somewhere to put all the stuff inside of it. I could maybe consume a couple of spoonfuls of caramel syrup at a time, but any more than that and it started tasting awful. Deliciously awful, but still awful. So that left the problem of what to do with the rest of the syrup. So on the first day, I decided to enjoy the fruits of my juvenile delinquency. I ended up attempting to pour the majority of the can of McDonald's caramel syrup all down my family's bathroom sink. Now, as a fun fact, caramel syrup does not go gently into that good night. It clogged up the sink almost immediately, leaving me in the one bathroom in our tiny single-family abode with a mostly full 10 cans of thick vanilla-flavored goodness, a sink filled up about a third of the way with the rest of it, and a growing line of siblings pounding on the door clamoring to get in so they can use the bathroom. Running hot water into the sink only helped a tiny bit. It diluted the syrup in the sink, but did nothing to unclog what must have been the world's largest Heath bar lodged in the P-trap under the vanity. I mean, even the plunger had no effect. In desperation, I used my cupped hands to transfer as much syrup and brownish sweet water from the sink over to the toilet, flushing as often as the tank would fill up. With the sink mostly emptied, I then attempted to clean up. But here's the thing, we kept cleaning supplies in the linen closet outside of the bathroom, so all I had to work with were towels and toilet paper. And I didn't dare try to use any of the towels because my mom would destroy me. So I tried using the toilet paper, which is when I learned that caramel syrup sticks to countertops, toilet seats, walls, floors, etc. much harder than it sticks to toilet paper. All I really managed to do was add a layer of Charmin to the mess on every surface between sink and toilet. Finally, faced with a pair of angry siblings, I opened the door. My older brother took one look at the place and said, "Oh my God, what were you doing in here? Did you take a number 2 in the sink?" Which, to be fair, was a reasonable first impression for someone seeing brown stains all over the sink, countertop, and toilet seat. But this all leads to my real mess up of the day. I just went along with it. Somehow, it made more sense at the time to confess to blowing out the sink's pipes by going to the bathroom than to admit that I had stolen a giant can of McDonald's caramel syrup. So clearly, value judgments were not my forte at the time. I don't remember what lame excuse I made. I might have just said something like, "Yeah, the toilet was clogged, so I didn't have a choice." It was probably something like that. And then I grabbed some Formula 409 out of the linen closet and started spraying it everywhere, despite my brother's increasing agitation to needing to go to the bathroom. Now, because they were never the brightest bulbs in the shed, they both accepted my lame explanation, satisfied perhaps with an admission of guilt and the potential of giving me a hard time about crapping in the sink, which they did for many decades and often with great enthusiasm. So from that point on, I became that weird cousin who craps in the sink. They would say something like, "Oh, don't let him use the bathroom, he'll crap all over your sink." And they would say that any time we visited our aunts and uncles. And of course, I would be helpless to defend myself. If I were to say, well, it was actually just a bunch of caramel syrup, that would have demanded way too much awkward explanation. And finally, there's a third, less impactful consequence. When I bragged about my heist to my closest fellow teenage colleagues, one of them made the astute observation that those cans were probably super expensive. I forget the math, but we concluded that I had committed the equivalent of Grand Theft Auto in McDonald's caramel syrup. So instead of getting to enjoy the fruits of my labor, we ended up opening just one more can, each spooning out enough to make us physically ill, and then dumping out the rest of it in the woods. So somewhere there's a dynasty of ants worshiping the divine provider that poured the manna from heaven that fed their colony for untold generations. Oh, and to add one more thing, after the wake-up call of realizing that I had definitely committed a felony, I decided that cutting through the McDonald's parking lot wasn't a good idea anymore, nor was being noticed as the one guy riding a bike at 4:30 in the morning every single day. The ace detective they assigned to solve the great syrup caper of 1978 would surely put 2 and 2 together, and all it would take is one blood sugar reading to prove my guilt. So I ended up quitting the swim team, which really wasn't all that big of a deal since I was an awful swimmer and I actually hated getting up that early anyways. Okay, this story is really funny to me. First of all, this guy got so lucky getting away with this. I can only imagine the employee's face once they realized that some of their stock that they ordered was not there. Like, there's a small likelihood that somebody got fired because of this, like no lie. But also, trying to pour all of that down the drain to get rid of it, only for your siblings to think that you crapped in the sink, like that is hilarious to me. So I personally think this story is hilarious, especially because the original poster ended up getting away with it. Am I the jerk for not allowing my ex and her new partner to move into my apartment, even though she gave me permission to break my lease 2 months early? Here's what happened. Okay, so my ex and I just went through a nasty breakup. We were together 11 years, and I found out that she was cheating on me with a guy from high school who lived out of state. She said that she was moving out, but I noticed that she had not packed anything and did not seem concerned about living arrangements. And at this point, I had a gut feeling that there was more to this story. So I resigned myself to the idea that I'd have to live with my ex for the last 2 months of my lease. We had 2 bedrooms and she moved into the other one, and she seemed agitated that I had not left. Finally, she started an enormous fight that got so bad, I had to leave and stay with a relative for the weekend. While I was gone, my apartment reached out to me. They said she was willing to let me out of my lease as she had a new roommate who could take over my spot on the lease, and she did this the day I paid rent. Now, I almost did it because I was so exhausted at that point, but then I said no. That person she was moving in was the person she cheated on me with. I paid for all the furniture in there, and I paid the bulk of the bills. If she wanted a new start with this person, they needed to pay for it themselves and not do it off of my back. I knew if I didn't sign that, the new guy would not be allowed to park at the complex. They are very strict and they would tow his car. It's also in my lease that nobody can move in without my permission. Now, purely out of spite, I was willing to pay the next 2 months of rent to not give them that. And eventually it worked. Their plans were ruined and they had to leave. I know I had somewhere safe to stay, but I was so done being used and manipulated. So am I the jerk for not letting my ex and her new partner move into my apartment? Because right now, I'm really not sure if I did the right thing. No, you're definitely not the jerk. Your ex literally tried to piss you off to get you to move out. That's the only reason she started that fight, and the fact that she even tried that in the first place is crazy to me. Like, did she really think that you would just move out and not take your stuff with you? Like, this lady is not that bright at all. Because you know what? If I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. Because you know for a fact she's only doing this as manipulation, and conveniently so right after you pay rent. Like, that is so toxic and obvious that she's trying to pull off some kind of fast one on you. And if I realized that in the way that you did, I would have done the same thing purely out of spite. So I would not feel bad about this in the slightest, because the way your ex was acting was completely unacceptable. Am I the jerk for telling off my parents after I told them that they spent my childhood focusing on my brother instead of me? Here's what happened. I'm a 17-year-old male, and my younger brother, who's 15 years old, has had a number of serious disabilities from birth. He suffered brain damage at birth, has a missing kidney, has digestive issues which forces him to eat through a feeding tube. He cannot walk and can only make sounds instead of talking, meaning that my parents' time and attention has been focused on him more than me. For the first few years after I was born, I spent a lot of time with my grandpa, who raised me from the age of 2 until I was about 7, and then I was seen as old enough to be at home after school and could make my own food and clean up after myself and not need supervision mostly. Now, my grandfather was willing and had offered to keep taking me after school, but my parents said that he didn't need to do it and he deserved to live his life. I never get one-on-one time with my parents. They couldn't afford field trips and never took the time to apply for the school field trip fund, so my grandfather picked up the slack there. He paid into my school lunch account so I didn't have to make my own lunch. My grandpa was the person who'd pick me up from school if I was sick. He would even stay and take care of me at home, since whichever parent would be home would really just say to go to bed or to lay on the couch and relax, and there was no caring for me or taking care of me when I was sick. When I was 11 years old, I got picked for this junior programmers contest through our school district, but my parents said they couldn't take the time for it, so they refused to sign off, and since my grandpa couldn't do it, even though he offered to take me, I missed out on that as well. When my laptop broke in October of 2020, it was my grandfather who replaced it for me so I could, go to school when school wasn't in person. When I got older, I was asked to do more, like cook for everyone, pick up medications, or get the special bath ready for my brother. And a few times, my mom and dad even reprimanded me for not doing it off of my own initiative. My parents have nothing set aside for me to go to college. They have never even considered colleges. And last year, I had my guidance counselor on my case wanting me to go to college and wanting us to attend some kind of college talk, and my parents just wouldn't go. I told her that I didn't have money for college, and she said that she would reach out to my parents about the forms, but they never got back to her. She called, she emailed, and she reached out repeatedly, but still there was nothing. Then I told her that I decided to skip college, and she was like, no, you need to go. And she tried reaching out to them again to talk about it, but they just wouldn't answer or even respond. My parents wanted to get a night off and catch up with some friends in town, and they asked me to babysit, and I said no. My parents then told me that I should help my family considering all that they do for me. So I asked them, what have they ever done for me? I told them it had to be for me and not for my brother. I asked them to name one thing, and then I pointed out all the stuff that they don't do and just haven't done for me. They then called me spiteful and told me to stop looking at it through the lens of a kid. So truly, am I the jerk in this situation for the way I responded to my parents? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I don't know what to do. No, I do not think you're the jerk at all for getting frustrated. For starters, this really is like a tricky situation because your brother definitely needs a lot of attention. His circumstance is very unique and truly, it just really is not that easy for anybody to deal with. But that also doesn't excuse the way your parents have been acting. So no, you're definitely not the jerk because you absolutely deserve attention from your parents. Am I the jerk for changing my unborn son's first name? All because my sister is trying to name her unborn child the exact same name. Because right now, my sister and my mother are mad that I'm changing my kid's first name, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my husband and I chose a name for our son early in my pregnancy. Now, we didn't tell anyone the name, but my sister snuck into the nursery to peek at what we had done and saw the name on the wall. She's also pregnant and said that she wanted inspiration for her baby nursery, and then she decided that because the cousins were being born so close together, they should share the same first name. And she told me it would be so cool to continue the tradition of multiple family members with the same name. But here's the thing, my sister never shared a name with a cousin. She had a family name where she was the only living person with it in the family. On the other hand, I did share a name with 3 cousins and an uncle, and I absolutely hated it. I chose to use my middle name, mostly because it was unique in terms of the family, and it wasn't super unique in general, but just enough. But nobody else in my family had my middle name, so I would use that more than my first name, even though some of my family members refused to call me anything else. My husband was disappointed, just like I was, when he learned that my sister had decided to use the name, and we started talking about changing the name. We decided to scrap the one we had originally chosen, and we covered over it in the nursery. Well, my sister and mom saw the finished nursery a couple of days ago, and my sister asked about the name, and she told me she was hurt that we were changing it. She said she had been so excited for the cousins to share a name, but I told her I wanted my son to not share a name with anyone else in the family. My mom said she thought it was amazing to have a few people with the same name in the family, and that it was a special connection between them, but I told them I disagreed. They then said I was overreacting, and that it would be mean to change my son's name after my sister was so excited for our boys to have the same first name. My husband has said that my family has issues with boundaries and accepting a difference of opinions. And you know what? I'm coming to realize that yeah, it even shows with some of them refusing to accept my name and the fact that my sister snooped on the nursery in the first place and then chose the name without asking if I'd be okay with it. I now keep getting text messages from my sister saying that I should not change the name. So are we in the wrong for doing this? Because right now we're still incredibly frustrated. No, there's no way you're the jerk in this situation. Your sister is being so weird right now. First of all, don't tell anybody the name of your son until your sister has her kid. Like, I would wait on that for a while and be like, nope, we're gonna wait. We don't want this happening again. And that would not be an overreaction because this has happened once already. So I would keep a lid on that until we know exactly what's going on. But it's also crazy to me that your sister's like, you need to change it back to what I want it to be. I want our kids to share a first name so they feel connected. And it's like, wait a second, we can feel connected without having the same first name. Like, that's so dumb. And the original poster knows what this is like. They had to share their first name with literally 4 other people, it sounds like. That is so annoying. I would hate that if I was in your shoes. Any sense of individuality or some kind of like uniqueness just goes right out the window. So no, you are not the jerk for changing your unborn son's first name because the way your sister is acting, in my opinion, is incredibly weird. My entitled friend confesses her love for me, stating that she wants to be my girlfriend even though she friend-zoned me and ghosted me for over 2 months. But after I showed my girlfriend and blocked this lady out of my life, she ends up showing up at my house to chew me out, furious that I've chosen my current girlfriend over her. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old male, and about 3 years ago, I had feelings for this girl who we will call Megan. She was 22, she was nerdy, she was into anime, and played a lot of video games. It was those traits that made me interested in her since I was also an anime lover and a gamer. Over time, that interest turned into genuine attraction. At first, I was hesitant about asking her out because I wasn't sure if she felt the same way. But after some encouragement from my friends, I made made my move. So we met up at a local diner for lunch, and the diner was one of those mom and pop places, and the food was really good. As we were eating, I finally decided to tell her how I felt. Again, I was hesitant about doing so, but went through with it anyways. And you know what? She seemed receptive at first. She asked me what it was about her that made me interested in her. So I listed off a few things. Her interest in anime, her taste in video games, her dark sense of humor, things like that. I didn't want to ask her to be my girlfriend right then and there, so instead I asked if she would be up for getting to know each other more and maybe going on an actual date or two to see where things go from there. She then goes on to apologize and say that she does like me, but only as a friend. She said that she didn't want to ruin our friendship and that she didn't want there to be any bad feelings if we did get together but ended up breaking up. And honestly, hearing that hurt a bit. Part of me wanted to at least try to convince her to change her mind, but the only words that came out of my mouth were to say, okay, I'm fine with that. We chatted for a little while longer before we left the diner and went our separate ways. Now, I tried to reach out a few times after that day just to see how she was doing, but I was either left on read or met with one-word replies. So after a while, I just stopped reaching out. Fast forward about 2 months and I finally met someone new. We'll call her Sophie. Sophie was into art and photography. In her own words, she told stories with her art. Whatever piqued her interest wound up as a painting or a sculpture, or even as a framed photo. She was really good at it, and after a while, those same feelings from months before started to come back. But what I didn't expect was for her to feel the same way. So I asked her to go on a date with me and she said yes. Date nights became a regular thing until eventually we made things official. After our 7th date, I asked if she would like to be my girlfriend and she said yes. The next day when I told my friends about it, they were all stoked. And that's because they were the ones that pushed me to move on and not let my rejection from months ago bother me. A week later, I'm sitting in my room reading a book when I get a messenger notification. I look up and I see that it's from Megan. I thought that this was kind of weird, considering the fact that she hadn't spoken to me in months. But out of curiosity, I opened the message, and her message was basically a short paragraph talking about how after having some time to think, she decided that she actually did want to be my girlfriend. Her message said that she always had feelings for me and that she was ready to give us a chance. So now things started to look even more weird. I mean, really, after all this time, all the one-word replies and unread messages, now she has feelings for me? I decided to take a screenshot of her message and I sent it to Sophie. And after that, I blocked Megan and I thought that would be the end of it. Well, about 2 days later, Megan shows up at my house and was extremely upset. As I open the door, she starts ripping me a new one, telling me how horrible I am for blocking her after she confessed her feelings for me. I told her that she has no right to be upset about anything, especially considering the fact that she was the one who rejected me and said that we would never be a thing. She then tries to guilt trip me, asking me if her feelings for me meant anything. I then said, well, where were those feelings when I was single? I told her that she doesn't get to switch it up now that she sees me with someone else, and then get upset at me for not going along with it. I told her to have a nice day, and then I shut the door. Well, at this point, our friend group is divided on this, and I'm starting to question if I did the right thing or not. I was just a bit upset, and it felt like she expected me to just ditch my girlfriend for her just because she changed her mind. So truly, am I at fault in this situation? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk, and you didn't do anything wrong. If anything, I think you seriously dodged a train. Like, this lady sounds insane. For starters, she straight up just ghosted you, and then when she sees that you have a new girlfriend, she's like, you know what, I changed my mind. I now want to be your girlfriend. Let's get together. And it's like, no, that doesn't work that way. You literally missed the boat. I'm sorry, but this is not okay. And the fact that she came to your house and was like, oh my god, I can't believe you blocked me, when it's like she absolutely knows that you already have a girlfriend, like that is so toxic it's not even funny. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because the way this lady acted, in my opinion, is truly insane. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that I'm not swapping rooms with her simply because she will be moving out soon and I simply don't want to go through the effort? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old male and I was in the car with my mom today and she asked me if my sister had said anything to me about switching rooms. Well, I said no one did, and then I asked what she meant. She said that apparently my sister wanted to switch rooms with me soon because my room has a smaller room beside it and she wanted to use that room for her daughter and then my room for her. My sister, for reference, is 26 years old and still lives at home with me and her parents, and she also has a 2-year-old daughter. Now, what makes this even more frustrating is that whenever she was pregnant, we did actually swap rooms because my room was downstairs, so it was more convenient for her, and I agreed to swap with her just to help her out. So she got what she wanted, and now she's asking me to swap her again. And this is all because she's never satisfied with what she has. But here's the thing, I am 100% not swapping with her because she is 26 years old and she was meant to be saving for the past year to move out. So there's like 0 point in us swapping rooms because she's just gonna move out soon anyways. And I'm also planning on getting my room painted as well. When my mom told me about this, I hadn't heard anything about it, but whenever we got home, my sister asked me how I would feel about switching rooms. So obviously in that moment, I said no, stating straight up that I would not be switching rooms with her. And when I said that, she actually seemed surprised for some reason, which I simply can't understand because I'm not sure why she thought I would be on board with it. She then asked me why, so I told her that I thought she was moving out soon, and she acted all offended and was like, "Oh, so you want to get rid of us?" and basically acted as if I heavily insulted her or something like that. She was also yapping about how she wants her daughter to have a room beside her, as if they would make me feel bad enough to agree with her. But I was just straight up with her, and I told her it wasn't happening, and she had the audacity to call me selfish and was just super pissed off at me for some reason. So am I the jerk for not wanting to swap my rooms with my sister again? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. If your sister was like a teenager or something like that, where she's coming at you and being like, "I want to switch rooms again," then I would kind of understand where this entitled weird attitude's coming from, but it's the fact that she's 26 years old that's kind of like throwing me for a loop. And trust me, I get it. Sometimes you gotta live at home and things just don't work out, so I'm not shaming the sister for living at home or anything like that, like that's not what's happening. But it does seem odd that she's supposedly planning on moving, but also trying to like set up a good room for her and her daughter. Like, I don't know about you, but that just doesn't sound like someone who's getting ready to move out. Because if anything, this sounds like someone who's getting ready to settle down and stay put. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk because you've definitely already done this once before, and switching rooms again with her, in my opinion, is just gonna be a pain in the neck. My parents are obsessed with only eating authentic food, even going as far as refusing to eat at a restaurant if they find out the food isn't authentic from the culture it comes from. And after watching this happen my entire life, I'm now at a point where I seriously just don't like going out to eat with them because their attitude is so obnoxious. Here's what happened. Okay, so this situation has been a thing ever since I can remember. We grew up in the Southwest and my parents loved Mexican food, but anytime we were out getting Mexican food, they would eat it while complaining the whole time that it wasn't authentic. And in typical fashion, it was all chain restaurants, so my Mexican food experiences was stuff like Chili's or Baja Fresh or On the Border, and this was a twice-a-month occurrence growing up. They would say stuff like, "I'm craving Mexican food. How about some Baja Fresh? Oh, that sounds great." And then they would proceed to complain for the entire meal about how it's not authentic. In fact, they hated it so much that they would steal 10 to 12 containers of salsa from the salsa bar just to take it home every time as well. And keep in mind, these were white yuppies from Southern California. They were not Hispanic people at all, and my grandparents were super waspy, people like politicians or college professors. The thing is that they never took us for authentic Mexican because they thought that it was beneath them. You have to go to Spanish-speaking neighborhoods, Spanish-speaking restaurants, or Spanish-speaking food trucks just to get the authentic stuff. The response when I asked what authentic Mexican was, and can we go get some this time, they would say, "Well, hopefully you get to have some someday, but we don't go to the places that offer it here." Now, I'm convinced they didn't even know what authentic Mexican was and just associated it with being cooked by an authentic Mexican person in a more rustic-looking kitchen or environment. My dad used to get these giant burritos from a food truck on his lunch break and then brag about how authentic they were when he got home. He would even brag that the cook didn't even speak English. And for some reason, this is a core childhood memory of mine. In fact, I got one with him once as a kid and an adult, and now I realize they were just simple flour tortilla burritos, and they were just served by a Spanish-speaking person out in a food truck. This whole dynamic carried over for decades to us kids being adults. Now, also, sushi is a big thing where I live, so we took them out for sushi. Mom never had it before, and Dad really didn't either. Now, Mom of course complained the entire time, and Dad jumped into complaining as well. The most notable one was when we went for my brother's graduation, because sushi is his favorite, and he wanted to share it with everybody. But my parents then start asking the wait staff if they have avocados in Japan, because they want the authentic sushi. And the answer, by the way, is of course not. So then they start making a fuss about why it's being served that way. I then tell them that there's no salmon in Japan either. But once I say that, they start to complain about the salmon they had been enjoying up until this point. They were enjoying the sushi because it was really good sushi, but the more I told them, the more they just didn't want it. And to be completely honest, I was instigating the situation because my brother and I enjoy watching them squirm over stuff like this at this point in our lives. This then devolves into both of them refusing to eat any of the sushi, all because it wasn't authentic. So I order them chicken teriyaki bowls, and I tell them it's the most authentic thing on the menu. But honestly, I cannot imagine existing in the self-inflicted prison that is their brains. It must be a sad way to experience this world because they can't even enjoy a delicious meal without the both of them being massive jerks. Wow, this is such a weird way to approach literally anything in your life. You mean to tell me that these people are obsessed with having authentic food of the culture it's coming from, and yet they still go to Chili's and On the Border and all these other chain restaurants, and it seems like they only go there to be like, wow, this is an authentic Mexican food, while also refusing to go get said Mexican food that's actually authentic from a food truck or in an area that doesn't speak English. And it's like, people, what do you want? Do you just want to complain? Or do you want to venture into the culture of people who actually made it and get it straight from the source? It's such a stupid way of approaching food in general. Well, this isn't authentic, so I'm not going to eat it. It's like, what are you talking about? Just eat your sushi. It's not that serious. So yeah, your parents are super weird because the way they're approaching food is so annoying and incredibly tedious. My older parents almost fell for a $7,000 scam as some jerk called my father claiming that he was a police officer and that my father had a warrant for his arrest. And even to this day, I'm still so frustrated that my parents almost fell for this. Here's what happened. Okay, so I got a text from my mom saying that dad is talking to a police officer on the phone, and this officer is claiming that he has a warrant for his arrest. Now, this immediately was a red flag for me, as I've heard these scams online before, so I proceed to ask my mom to get the police officer's name and badge number and what city he's calling from. Once I have this information, I go ahead and contact the city that he's claiming to be from and provide my dad's information and ask if he's got any kind of active warrant. Well, the person at the other end of the line is claiming that they see nothing under his name or birth date for warrants. I then asked about the officer that my dad was supposedly talking to, and then I gave them their badge number, and the receptionist says that nobody by that name works for the city. She then says to me, let me guess, they're saying that you missed your court date and you owe them money? And she said that because it's a very common scam that's been going around. So with this information, I start calling my parents and they don't answer, but I just keep calling them, and eventually my dad answers and he says, hey, I'm busy right now. I'll talk to you in a little bit. And then he hangs up on me and doesn't give me a chance to explain that he's talking to a scammer. I immediately text my mom that dad is being scammed. I called the city, there's no warrant, and that officer doesn't exist. And my God, it was crazy frustrating in that moment that he's more than willing to speak to a scammer on the phone, creating a false sense of urgency, rather than his son who's done the research and verified that all of this is not real. Needless to say, I'm terrified for the future if people like my father, who's in his mid-60s, are falling for scams like this. The only reason that my parents actually believed it is that the scammer faked his caller ID to match what Google says the police department number is for our local branch. And doing something like that is obviously the oldest trick in the book, and it's such a shame that my parents nearly fell for it because they were almost out $7,000 as a result. Yeah, that's crazy. You definitely have to be careful with who's calling you. If someone's calling asking for your information or saying stuff like, oh, you're being sued, or oh my God, you have an arrest warrant, or anything else like that, seriously, first off, they're not going to call you, and secondly, you definitely have to cross-reference before you give any of your information. So while I'm really glad that the original poster's parents didn't fall for the scam in the end, the fact that they were even taking that seriously in the slightest, in my opinion, is incredibly alarming. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for finally putting my foot down after my mom's refused to allow me to go to a doctor after having a cough for over a month? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old female, and I started to get what I thought was the cold or the flu around the end of September. I was coughing, sneezing, and my eyes were watering. I mean, truly, the whole works. I didn't think much of it since I normally feel a bit awful when the seasons change, and this was right around the time everyone was getting sick. Well, a week into October, my symptoms were getting worse. I started coughing so much to the point that it would trigger my gag reflex. Then I started to have trouble keeping food down. Since I work in customer service, I had one nightmare of a time talking to people. Every 3 words, I would start coughing uncontrollably, and no amount of tea could help. 3 weeks in, and I start to develop a light fever. It's nothing too crazy, but I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Tossing and turning in bed would disrupt the phlegm and mucus in my throat, and I would end up coughing so much I had to spend most of the night hunched over the toilet until all the mucus came up and I felt good enough to go back to bed. Now, at this point, it's been about 4 weeks, and gagging in the bathroom over the toilet is a daily occurrence. I still can't sleep properly. I'm running out of breath and coughing when I'm just walking to my bus stop, or even when I'm going up a few flights of stairs, and I haven't been able to eat anything of substantial food in 2 days. But even still, my mom refuses to take me to see a doctor and is convinced that I just have a cold. We don't have a family doctor, she won't give me my updated health card, and she will not let anyone take me to a doctor or a walk-in clinic. She has ignored me before when it comes to health problems that I've had, such as my esophagus being ripped open from the pure force of me throwing up for 2 weeks. And of course, she completely forgot the fact that the doctor said if we had waited even an hour, which is something she originally wanted to do, they would have had to shove a tube down my throat and I would have had an infection. She has also completely ignored and denied a nurse who was saying that I needed a knee brace when I smacked my knee so hard on a rock during a hike that it shattered the cartilage in my kneecap. She ended up slapping a compression bandage on it and complained when I was still hobbling around 2 weeks later and said that I was overreacting. In fact, one time I had a bit of pillow fluff stuck in my ear and it took her 3 years to take me to get it checked out and to get it finally cleaned out. She waited so long that both my ears developed a really bad skin infection and I had to take a bunch of medication and eardrops just to fix it. Well, tonight I finally put my foot down and I told her directly that if she didn't take me to see a doctor within this week, I'm gonna find a way to take myself there. She then started crying, saying stuff like, "How could you possibly go against my better judgments?" And then asked me how I could possibly believe all of my coworkers, teachers, and peers who were telling me to go see a doctor all over my own mother. I tried to talk over her, saying how I've been sick for almost a month and that even if it is just a cold, it wouldn't hurt to get it checked anyways. I then started coughing a lot and she kept telling me to be quiet and the reason why I'm still sick is because I won't shut my mouth. So am I the jerk for finally standing up for myself? Because right now I'm still incredibly frustrated. No, your mom is an awful parent. Who in their right mind would be like, oh, you're just faking it, and then continue to let their kid, I don't know, have an awful cough or walk around with a limp or be like, oh yeah, I literally can't hear out of this ear because there's something in it. Like seriously, it doesn't sound like the original poster's like looking for attention. They just want to be healthy and their mom is literally denying them that. So no, you didn't do anything wrong, and if I was in your shoes, I would go straight to a doctor's office or some kind of urgent care because what you're experiencing definitely needs to be looked at by a doctor. I don't know about you, but if I had a cough for like over a month, I'd be like, okay, there's got to be something wrong here. So hopefully this all works out for you, and hopefully you're able to get like a copy of your insurance card because what your mom's doing right now is really not good and you deserve way better than that. Am I the jerk for wasting everybody's time in therapy all because I was accused of lying by my scumbag mother? Because right now I'm still very frustrated and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 16-year-old female and my mom, her husband, and I are in a group therapy with each other. We started therapy a few weeks after Father's Day because that was the final straw for them to insist we all needed therapy to work on why I won't let us be the family that they want. We started at the end of July, and by the end of August, my mom accused me of lying, called me a liar, and laid out this really big sob story about how much it hurt to have me lie to her and do everything in my power to destroy her marriage. And this really pissed me off, and I didn't lie at any point of this. I said as much in the follow-up session, and the therapist asked me to outline my side and how I felt having mom call me a liar. My mom kept trying to interrupt me, and she told the therapist to shut up, and she accused me of being a vicious liar. Now, to give some explanation about the situation, my mom and her husband got married 3 years ago. They moved in together 2 months before, and before moving in, they sat me down and asked me if I was okay with us moving in together and making a family of 3 again. My mom brought up how we would have a man around the house again, since we didn't have one because my dad passed away, and how good it would be for her to have a husband and for me to have a dad. And he said he couldn't wait to be my dad, and he always wanted to be a father. In fact, he said he already had plans for us on Father's Day. Now, this was February of 3 years ago, and I told him I wasn't okay with that stuff. I said that I didn't want another dad, and I wouldn't let him be my dad. And on top of that, I was not about to spend Father's Day celebrating someone who is not my dad. Well, they started laughing and proceeded as normal, but Father's Day became a struggle because I have not spent the day with him the last 3 years. And trust me, he has tried, and so has my mom. But I meant what I said. I never called him dad or let him fill the role in my life. Well, this year he snapped, and he had a temper tantrum and said I was supposed to be with him on Father's Day and not spending the day alone, and that he did not sign up to be nothing to me. My mom then called me a liar because she said I promised to develop a close relationship with her husband and that I said yes to wanting what they asked. She said that I had said that I would give him Father's Day and that I lied and I've not followed through on any of it. She said that I made him think I would be a willing participant and that I wanted us to be a family, but it pisses me off because I never said what she claims, and I even repeated what I had said back to them. The therapist couldn't get my mom to apologize, and she has no control over the sessions where my mom and her husband dominate it, so I'm just just totally silent and I zone out. And this is something that they only realized 2 weeks ago. Eventually, they called me on it and I spoke up again after more than a month of not talking in therapy, just to confirm that I was not listening. It then came up last week and I said I was done engaging because I was owed an apology for being called a liar. My mom and her husband are now pissed off that I'm wasting everybody's time letting therapy happen. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk. Your mom and her husband absolutely went about this the wrong way. Instead of going to therapy for legitimate reasons, they went to therapy in some kind of desperate attempt to convince you, if not make you, call this guy your dad and spend Father's Day with him in some kind of way. And that is honestly so toxic and so weird. Like your mom is straight up lying about you and trying to be like, oh yeah, you're actually the problem here. You said you would give him this day and you would develop a close relationship. But it's like, what are you talking about? None of that happened. You laid it out very clearly and these people just laughed you off. And that, in my opinion, shows everything that you need to know. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would be spacing out during these therapy sessions too. Because if this therapist is gonna let these people call you a liar and then not even be allowed to share your point of view, then honestly, this is all just a complete waste of time. An entitled Karen lies to the building management, claiming that I hosted a loud party in my unit. And now I'm facing a noise violation by my apartment building, which puts me in jeopardy of my living situation. And I'm honestly so frustrated and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so this story is a bit of a long one, but let me paint a picture for you guys of what is truly going on in my life. I have lived in various apartments for the past decade in a variety of major cities, both in the United States and outside of the United States, and in New York City before, and I've never once received a complaint of any kind, whether formal or informal, from any neighbors, the building, anything. I've always had good and pleasant relationships with my neighbors, making small talk in the common areas, asking about their lives, and all this other stuff. I've also thrown numerous parties in the past, typically a couple times a year, maybe 3 times at most, and these things are not crazy endeavors. They're basically glorified dinner parties. My God, the latest one even had a full-on charcuterie board that I curated. I recently moved into a coop in Midtown Manhattan that I'm renting out not even 2 weeks ago, and the resident Karen has already started complaining. I would understand if there was some kind of repeated pattern of annoyance, but this lady decided that the Friday housewarming dinner party that I threw was completely unacceptable. Now, for some more context about this building, we are in a loud part of Midtown Manhattan. We're near a major university hospital where you can hear sirens going off at all hours of the day and night, and we're right by the highway ramp where you can hear trucks bouncing over potholes every few minutes, which is to say that I don't think anywhere here has any experience of pin drop quiet in general. But also, in the 2 weeks that I've lived here, I have not been able to hear a peep from anything going on in the other units. Not from the ones next to me, not on my floor, not from above me or below me. So unless everyone in this building lives their lives like they're in some kind of monastery, the soundproofing seems fairly decent. Now, all of that is to say that I really don't think that someone could legitimately file a noise complaint unless either A, the unit was being really loud, and I mean really, really loud, or option B, they are just a building Karen actively looking for others to bother, which then brings me to the eve of the party. Again, it was a Friday night in New York City. A total of about 10 people came along, all mostly in their late 20s or early 30s like myself, and all of us were young professionals. Now, for good measure, I gave the doorman downstairs a heads up that I would be hosting some people that evening and told them to call me if there was any kind of issues, and they said no problem, and I assumed that things would be good for the evening. The party involved some background music playing out of a small Bluetooth speaker that I literally have attached to my TV, and it is super small, and the volume was no higher than what you would put it at if you're watching a movie alone in your home. And people were either sitting on the couch or standing in my living room, just chatting and mingling with one another. There was no dancing of any kind, there were no drinking games, no tomfoolery of any kind. Basically, just a charcuterie board, some wine, and some talking. Now, the party started at 9:00 p.m., and we did that because our profession often involves late hours of work, which is why we started at that time. Well, this Karen comes to my door not even 2 hours later, complaining about all the noise that we were making. Now, this Karen looked a bit older than me, maybe in her 30s or 40s, and she was alleging that she could hear our party all the way from the end of the hallway. Now, I was kind of taken aback by this because, again, the party had not seemed that loud to me, but still I apologized. I told her I would turn the background music down even further, and I offered her some food or drinks as a peace offering. I thought I was being neighborly. Now, she tells me no, but the exchange seemed to have gone fine enough, and I didn't think that too much would come of it. She asked me to turn it down, and I complied. But before turning it down, I went out into the hallway myself to see if the noise was actually projecting that far. Well, spoiler alert, I could not hear any noise from the party in the hallway whatsoever. whatsoever. Well, that is unless I was maybe standing right outside of my door, and we're talking like maybe 5 feet away from it at max. But even so, I still turned down the music even more as per her request, and I asked my guest to lower the chatting volume just a little bit, just to try and be respectful of the neighbor's request. The party was over right around midnight, and everyone went home except for one friend of mine who was crashing for the night. Fast forward to the next morning, and it's probably around 11 o'clock in the morning, maybe noon the next day. We're talking 12 hours after the party had already ended. My friend opens the front door to head out, and guess who we spot standing right there? It's the entitled Karen, literally loitering outside my door, with an expression that I can only describe as someone who looked like they just got caught in the act. Now from this, I assumed that maybe she was from one of the units directly adjacent to me. I live at the end of the floor hallway, and the elevator and stairs are not anywhere near where my apartment's at. So that means unless you live in my unit, or you're one of my neighboring units, you would have literally no reason to be in this section of the hallway. Well, it turns out my assumption was wrong. My friend says that the entitled Karen got into the elevator with her and proceeded to get off the elevator one floor below mine. And for reference, the floor below mine is purely residential, no communal spaces, or anywhere you would be able to go to unless you actually lived in one of the units on that floor. And I thought to myself, okay, that's kind of weird, right? Considering the fact that either A, this Karen was loitering outside of my door the next morning, and option B, that her initial complaint was that she could allegedly hear my party all the way down from the other end of the hall. So with that attitude, you would think that she was one of my floor neighbors. But no, it looks like she came all the way up from another floor to both complain and then snoop at my doorway the next morning. Now, as a side note here, I am well aware that sometimes sound can carry upwards or downwards in apartment buildings, and that it is possible that she could somehow hear the party from below me more than my actual neighbors. But still, if that were the case, she should have said so instead of concocting the story about my party being so loud that she could hear it down the hall on the entire other side of the building. And on top of that, like I said earlier, ever since I've moved in here, I have not been able to hear a peep from either the unit above me or below me. So I'm skeptical, especially given that the noise level did not seem unreasonable when I went to check at all, and 0 other complaints were received. Fast forward to yesterday, and I get an email from the third-party management company informing me that one of my neighbors, and I'm sure you can guess who it was, had submitted a noise complaint about me. I replied to the email trying to explain the full situation. The party was not very big, it was not very loud, and I had kept the doorman in the loop, and that I had still turned things down even further when she complained, and I was doing that just to be neighborly. Well, the management company lady then responds with the most aggressive, condescending email I've probably ever received from a so-called professional, accusing me of not taking responsibility, how she's disappointed in me, and all this other garbage. Now, that's almost an entirely separate story, but I stuck to my guns. I reiterated my side of things, and how I really did not think that things had gotten out of hand, and I was able to at least get this lady to concede that if another noise complaint is called in, someone from the building staff will have to come up to somewhat objectively determine whether the noise complaint has any merit. I was also told to get more rugs to cover at least 80% of my flooring. Now, this requirement was news to me. While in fairness, there is a line in the lease about this requirement, it was phrased as not being mandatory if the landlord doesn't require it. And when I toured the unit, the previous tenant had 0 rugs of any kind, so I had assumed that it didn't apply to me. But like, okay, whatever, I can get some rugs if they really want me to. But all of this is to say that I now feel attacked in my own home, and I'm afraid to have another party, or else this entitled Karen's going to complain that it's too loud. I'm also incredibly creeped out that she was loitering by my door the next morning for literally no justifiable reason, given how reasonable the noise level seemed to be at my party when I went to check the situation for myself in the hallway, and given again how it was relatively early on a Friday night in Midtown Manhattan. I don't know how to get this woman off my back if I ever have people over again. To be fully transparent, building quiet hours are technically from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. But again, even with that requirement, I didn't think any of the sound coming from my apartment was enough to constitute a violation. On top of that, my understanding from having lived in many apartment buildings in the past was that the quiet hours on weekends have a bit more wiggle room overall. Look, I would get it if I was blasting music through amps into the wee hours of the morning, but I was not blasting the music at all. And again, this is probably the volume of a TV that you would watch alone in your room. And secondly, when this entitled Karen decided to complain, it was barely even half an hour after 10 o'clock. And at least for me, unless the noise is truly egregious or a repeat offense, I would never submit a noise complaint with the building. And just to reiterate, I've been in this building for barely 2 weeks, and this woman decides to already complain. So honestly, I'm so sick of this lady, and I really just don't know what to do. Yeah, this is really toxic for several reasons, because it's pretty obvious that this lady is completely lying. She's only doing this to try and get you in trouble. Like you said it yourself, you walked down the hallway and you said, okay, let's see if there's any kind of noise. And from the sounds of it, you seem like a reasonable human being. So I think it's safe to say that you're not lying when you're like, okay, there's no noise. Nothing that you wouldn't experience literally outside in New York City. And I know the area that she's describing, by the way, and yes, it is super loud. So for this entitled Karen to not only go up to a different floor to complain, but also be like, wow, you're being so loud right now, is so unbelievably annoying because, like, seriously, lady, look out your window. I guarantee you the noise outside of your building is probably way worse than anything the original poster was doing. So hopefully this all works out in your favor, because the way this Karen was acting was completely out of line, because you clearly didn't do anything wrong, and it seems like this Karen was literally just looking for trouble. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled old jerk snaps at me after I put my groceries on the belt to get them checked out, even going as far as blaming me after he can't pay for his groceries. And I'm honestly still so confused by this bizarre interaction that it's left me scratching my head if I actually did anything wrong. Here's what happened. So at my local grocery store, they have these self-checkout lanes that have an employee doing the bagging and a full grocery treadmill setup. I pulled in behind the old entitled jerk of this story who was already scanning his items. I put up the divider and put my items onto the treadmill. Well, when he was done with his items, my items slid all the way up, which is exactly what they should do. But somehow the closeness of my items messed with him while he was trying to check himself out. It's not like they were physically in the way, but instead I guess they were just in his field of vision. He then says to me rudely, "Excuse me," and I just look at him and I say, "I'm sorry?" He then says, "I mean, come on." He then proceeds to move some of my stuff by shoving it. Like he literally put his hands on my apples. So I looked at him and I calmly said, "Come on, man. It's not like I put them there. They move up automatically." He then proceeds to ignore me while trying to complete his transaction. But after about 30 seconds, I start to get a little bit annoyed that the rude guy is holding up the line. So I look at what he's doing just in time to see that his card got declined on the card reader. He then looks at the bagger dead in the eyes, who by the way has already finished bagging his items, and says to him, "I'm sorry. I really can't handle someone being right behind me putting pressure on me." He then just calmly walks out of the store, leaving his items. The bagger and I just look at each other and both of us are confused. And I even saw him walking while I was riding away from the store. Now part of me feels bad for the guy. Maybe I would have helped him pay for his food in another world. But why did he have to be such a jerk? And also, just for reference, I was never less than 8 or so feet away from the guy. My items were around 2 feet from the card reader, and he wasn't even near touching them. So honestly, the whole situation is so ridiculous because this guy's attitude was completely out of line. Yeah, that's a weird chip on your shoulder for someone just trying to check out their groceries. Like seriously, he tried to blame you for the belt moving up your items, and then basically tried to blame you for his card getting declined. And it's like, wait a second, what's going on right now? This is not okay. So yeah, that guy was super rude, and he absolutely was in the wrong. Am I the jerk for telling my roommate that his girlfriend can't stay over every weekend after she literally ate all of my food that I bought for myself? Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I own my own apartment, and I rent out the second room to a buddy of mine. Everything was cool at first, but lately his girlfriend has been staying over every weekend. I wouldn't mind so much if it wasn't for the fact that every time she's here, she helps herself to my stuff, mainly my food. I meal prep for the week and I buy my own groceries. It's not like I don't share sometimes, but I've noticed that after every weekend that she's here, a bunch of my food is completely gone. Snacks or leftovers, even stuff like my eggs and bread, just completely gone. I've tried hinting at it, like casually mentioning how much food I go through, but it just keeps happening. Fast forward, and last weekend, I had to work a really long week at work, so I treated myself to some nice takeout and planned to save half of it for lunch the next day. Well, the next morning comes around and I open the fridge and guess what? It's completely gone. I texted my roommate and he said to me, "Oh, my girlfriend was hungry, so she ate it. Sorry, man." And that was honestly the last straw. I told him that we needed to talk and said that while I'm okay with her visiting sometimes, she can't keep staying over every weekend and eating my food. I told him that it's not fair, especially since she's not contributing to groceries or utilities. When I said this, he got defensive, saying that since he pays the rent, she should be able to stay over whenever, and I'm making a big deal out of just a few snacks. But I stood my ground and told him that she needs to stop coming over so often unless they start buying their own food and being more considerate. Well, now he's really pissed off at me, and as a result, I'm getting the cold shoulder. So am I the jerk for putting my foot down after his girlfriend completely ate all of my food? Because right now I'm still mad and I'm really not sure what to do. No, you're definitely not the jerk here. This is not okay. okay. She's coming into your home and eating your food. And it's like, wait a second, if she's seriously hungry, then why not just eat the roommate's food instead of yours? Like, this all seems very inconsiderate and very targeted towards you. And it's really hilarious to me that your roommate's like, oh, come on, it's just a few snacks. It's like, no, man, this is not okay. You can't do that to someone. This is your food after all. I mean, if you really wanted to be petty, you could flip the table and be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna start eating all of your food. Then you could see how he would react and be like, oh, come on, man, it's just a few snacks. Like, I'm pretty sure he would be just as pissed off as you are. And rightfully so, like, you can't do that to someone. So no, you're not in the wrong here, you're not the jerk, and I think you're completely justified in what you said. Because what his girlfriend is doing, in my opinion, is incredibly inconsiderate. My manager is forcing me to work more hours, all because they claim that I'm a good employee. But right now, I'm completely burnt out, and I really need some time off to actually refresh and be ready to work. Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm a 26-year-old female, and I really need someone to tell me that I'm not overreacting. I recently started a job about 3 months ago, and I can't really say what the job's name is since I want to keep this private, so I'm just going to call the restaurant that I work at Jalapenos. Now, I started working at Jalapenos as a takeout person the first week I had training, and I was super excited for the job, and honestly was just super happy and literally excited to work there. But the first week after training, I was kind of surprised with how much part-time hours were there. I mean, I was already doing nearly 40 hours a week on my first week. I worked there anywhere from 8 to 10-hour shifts, and I was extremely tired. In less than a month, I was already crying every day in the bathroom and was feeling extremely overwhelmed. I had to cry to a manager that I wanted to have more than 2 days off that are not split. It doesn't really feel like a break when I'm off maybe Monday and then the next day off is Thursday. She told me she will fix it immediately, and I felt relieved. Well, I got what I wanted for 2 weeks, but slowly my schedule started reverting from 3 days off to split 2 days. And when I checked my schedule today, I only had 1 day off this week, and it was a Monday. I asked my boss what happened to the schedule and why I was scheduled for only 1 day when the other to-go hostess has 2 and 3 days off at a time. She then told me it's because I'm an outstanding hardworking employee and that I should be glad to have more hours. And it's like, excuse me? I have a life outside of work. I haven't been able to do things that I needed because I'm always at work. And this is supposed to be a part-time job, by the way. I'm working more hours than my sister who has a full-time job. This is ridiculous. I'm barely getting any sleep and I don't have time for myself anymore. I'm trying to stay here until Christmas is over and then I'm off to another job. But this isn't fair that just because I'm good, that means it's okay to work me to the ground. I honestly don't get it and I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, if you're hired as a part-time worker and they're putting you at full-time hours, then in my opinion, that is a massive red flag that is not a good place to work at. Your manager's only trying to like blow smoke up your rear end by saying, oh, you're such a good worker. That way they can keep working you to the bone while everybody else gets to have like time off and be fresh for their shift. Like, this is complete manipulation. That's all this is. And you know what? In my opinion, if these people want to claim that you're a part-time employee, then by all means tell them, hey, I'm only a part-time employee. I can't work 40 plus hours and not have some kind of full-time status. Because that, in my opinion, is completely ridiculous. That is not fair in the slightest. So to answer the question you never asked, yes, you absolutely should find a new job. This place sucks and it sounds like it's absolutely miserable. Because at the end of the day, they are 100% taking advantage of you. And you do not deserve that in the slightest. My entitled boss took advantage of me for far too long, pushing me so hard that I ended up passing out in the back kitchen. And I'm honestly so glad to be away from that place because that lady was honestly the absolute worst. Here's what happened. Okay, so this story takes place in about 2021. At the time, I was 20 years old and I worked as a server and a barista at a brunch restaurant. Overall, I liked my job, but the manager was the worst. She hated me because apparently I was a threat to her job. I had ownership experience under my belt since I had owned a restaurant with my family prior to this job, and I expressed to the owners and her that I had no interest in her job, but she still didn't care. And as a side note, the owners themselves were open about wanting to replace her since she had awful reviews and had a high turnover rate. She hated me from day one, always demanding I work the extra shifts as opposed to asking me, giving me all the menial jobs and coming in early hours. Anytime that I needed off for something, she would get on my case about how we were a family and I had to pitch in. And this is all while I'm tearing myself apart trying to please this lady. And this is just a few examples, trust me on this one. She was absolutely awful, but this situation that I'm going to describe is what finally broke me. In March of 2021, I needed surgery, and the doctor said that I would need a week off. When I came back, I had a strict regimen from my surgeon about what I could and could not do. No heavy lifting and stuff like that. Well, I gave this to my manager and I went over it with her. She then put on this sickly sweet sweet smile and said, "No problem, sweetie." And it's like, oh my god, I just want to roll my eyes. Anyways, it was a Saturday, and I was alone on the barista bar, with a line going all the way out the door. I had 3 third-party tablets blaring, a 4-table section, and servers at the service bar bugging me about drinks. Now, this next part is fuzzy, but this is what my coworker said happened. I was stumbling through the kitchen with my eyes glassy and my hands grasping for counters to hang on to. I was mumbling about making coffee when I promptly hit the deck and I was out cold. And they said I was out for a few minutes. When I came to, I heard them on the phone with 911, and I said to him, "Please hang up because I cannot afford an ambulance." Standing over me was my friend Jay and the manager. And the first words out of this woman's mouth was to say to me, "So when you get back on the floor, we really need you." She didn't even ask me if I was okay. I mean, this was my first day back. And it was at that moment that I realized she didn't even see me as a person, just some kind of work monkey. So I responded by saying, "You can accept my 2 weeks resignation." And then I got up and I left. When my 2 weeks were up and I told her that it was my last day, she asked me if I really was serious about that, and I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I can honestly say that I'm so glad that I'm finally out of there. Wow, talk about an awful manager. She didn't care that you just passed out on the floor. She didn't care that you were struggling and had all these limitations. She just wanted you to keep working. And I bet it's all because she didn't want to work herself. I know so many managers in the restaurant industry who act that way, where they push their workers so hard, also they can sit in the back and do nothing the entire day. Or even worse, sit on the cameras and watch you and like micromanage you instead of stepping up and actually getting something done. The original poster actually went on to say that that business ended up getting sued, and even though this was a part of like an unrelated situation, they also joined in on the settlement. So in the end, I guess it kind of worked out where this business got exactly what they deserved, because the way this manager treated you, in my opinion, is completely unforgivable. A group of entitled jerks demand that we give up our table at a restaurant so that they can take it over. Things get so weird that they end up getting physical with me and my friend, basically by pushing us out of the way so that they can steal our table and use it for themselves. Here's what happened. So this happened a week ago today, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I got dinner with a friend who I had not seen for months. We chose a local restaurant that's known for its great food and beautiful outdoor dining area with a stage. It's a popular spot for all ages, but especially for the older crowd when certain local bands are playing. When we arrived, the patio was mostly empty, and the hostess seated us at a 4-top table in a corner right by the stage. By the time we had received our appetizers, the patio was a little busier as a band was going to be starting in about 30 minutes, but there were still a lot of empty tables. Just as the server was bringing our meals, the entitled older couple of this story and a few of their friends walked right past the hostess stand that had a very clear "wait to be seated" sign and took a table next to ours. We got maybe a couple of bites down when the man of the group came up and asked if he could borrow one of the empty chairs at our table. Now, we told him that was no problem, but instead of taking a chair, he took a couple of steps and stood right behind me, breathing right down my neck, and was trying to talk to us. I was pretty uncomfortable and I just hunched my shoulders. I said to him, "Sir, we're in the middle of a conversation." He then loudly responded by saying, "Well, I don't want to take the chairs with your purses in it," while also trying to pat my shoulder at the same time. I then twisted away and I said, "Okay, well, the other chair's empty, take that one." But when I said that, he laughed and just repeated, "I don't want to take the ones with the purses." He then literally picked up that chair, forcing me to grab our purses off of it as he walked away. My friend and I just shook our heads at each other and returned to our meals. Then the wife of this couple came up and started speaking angrily, gesturing at the stage. I couldn't hear what she was saying, and the husband gently pulled her away, saying, "Enjoy your meals, ladies. No rush, but you know." And then he laughs as he jerks his head towards the woman with him. I asked my friend if she knew what the lady had been saying, but she just shook her head. And then I noticed the woman glaring at us from their table, one even pointing at us. So I turned my chair so they weren't in my peripheral vision anymore, and I focused on my meal and my conversation with my friend. Well, the entitled Karen of this couple and her friends continued to go out of their way to make us uncomfortable. They were glaring and making rude comments at us. They were accidentally bumping our table if they had to go to the restroom, which, by the way, was the opposite direction of where our table was compared to theirs. It was so ridiculous and childish. From their comments, we finally realized they wanted our table since it was closer to the stage. Now, there were plenty of other tables still open, including one directly in front of the stage, but they wanted our table. Now, my friend and I are both currently taking a break from alcohol, so we weren't drinking and we weren't being loud. We weren't even taking up that much space. We were just catching up over some food and had been planning to stay and listen to the band for just a little bit. We had rightfully been seated there by the hostess and had every right to enjoy our night. But by the time we finished our food, we were both over these idiots' BS and just wanted to go home. We paid just as the band was beginning to tune their instruments. And as we stood up, my friend walked around the table to stand next to me. But as I was taking a moment to count our tip and setting the little tray with my tip on the table, two of the women in that group came up and one of them elbowed me out of the way as they grabbed the table and pulled it against theirs. Now, I was about to go off on them about how rude they were, but my friend, who is much more patient than I am, put her hand on my arm. So I just set my tip on the table, raised my hand in the air and said, "Okay," and I just walked away, loudly grumbling about these entitled jerks. I still feel like I should have said more, especially since the one lady actually elbowed me out of the way before I had even stepped away from my chair. But also, I could not wrap my head around adults behaving that way, and I just don't know what I would have said. Because at the end of the day, there were so many other tables available, and these entitled jerks just simply had to take ours. Oh man, if that was me, I absolutely would have complained. I would have gone up to the server or some kind of manager and been like, "Listen, these people are actively bullying me, my friend. Like, this is not okay. Something has to change." Not to mention this guy literally breathing down your neck and like right up in your business. Like, that would have driven me crazy. There's no way I would put up with that. So sure, your friend's super patient and they were trying to just help out, but if that was me, I absolutely would have said something, because that kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to take my turn in hosting family dinners? All because everybody always bails out when it's my turn. Because right now I'm very frustrated and I don't know what to do. Okay, so I come from a family that values big Sunday dinners, and we've always rotated between whose house we gather at. The idea is that everyone contributes by hosting one of these dinners, but recently it feels like I'm the only one actually holding up my end of the bargain. Every time it's my turn to host, my siblings and even my parents seem to come up with last-minute excuses to skip. The last time I prepared a full meal, and my sister canceled an hour before because she just wasn't feeling well, and my brother had work stuff. I spent hours prepping the food, and even made special dishes that everybody usually loves. This has happened several times now, and I'm starting to feel like my effort isn't being appreciated at all. Last week it was my mom's turn to host, and everyone showed up without any excuse or last-minute cancellation. But now my turn is coming up again, and I don't feel like going through all the effort when no one ever shows up. When I told my family that I was thinking of skipping my turn and letting someone else host, they all got upset with me. My dad said I was being dramatic and that it's just how family is sometimes, but I can't help but feel like I'm always the one getting the short end of the stick. So am I the jerk for refusing to host family dinners when no one else ever shows up to mine? Because right now I am seriously frustrated. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and honestly, I don't blame you for being like, "No, I'm not doing it this time." These people are not even showing up to your dinner. You're spending your time and money getting this all prepped, and no one's even bothering showing up. Like, if this happened one time and it was just like a weird extenuating circumstance, then sure, this wouldn't be totally out of the ordinary. But it's the fact that this only happens when you host, in my opinion, is a big red flag. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because if I was in your shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Would I be the jerk if I dropped someone as my friend after she's changed so much all because she got married? Because right now I feel very left out, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I've been friends with this girl who's 20 years old for maybe about 7 years. We live in different cities now, but we do stay in touch. But in the last year and a half, I've noticed that I'm putting in way more effort than she is. And overall, I noticed that when we talk, she quickly shifts the conversation to talk about herself. A year ago, she got really dependent on her new family lifestyle, and I was on the phone with her for hours a day because she didn't have people to help her in the stress of her soon-to-be wedding. And I was going to be at her wedding, but unfortunately, I got COVID. I still helped how I could, and I went through the effort of putting together a big package and mailing it to her as a wedding gift for her and her husband. She then quickly got pregnant, and she was always complaining about morning sickness and all this other stuff. I know it's really tough, but again, she barely acknowledged when I was talking about my life. Fast forward, and when she gave birth, I set up a surprise delivery of flowers and a gift for her. Now, last week it was my birthday. She knew about this, and I had posted a bit of it on my story as well, which she was watching all day. Now, I know she has her hands full with her 2-month-old child, but she still couldn't take 5 seconds to send a small text message. And I know being a new mom is exhausting, but she has a whole team caring for her, the baby, and her home, all while she's already been on 2 vacations since giving birth. And she's always active on social media, and I am happy that she does have the luxury of having time for herself. Overall, I don't agree with the path that she set up for herself, and before her marriage, I tried to voice my concern to her, but it is her choice, and I never brought it up again. But she never finished college. She never had a job, and she gets an allowance from her husband and was even prepping for a baby before the wedding. And when I spoke about my life and work, she was always shocked at how much work I had and bragging that she doesn't have to do anything. But I worked hard, and I'm now financially independent with a good job and a bachelor's degree at 20 years old. In contrast, she has absolutely no safety net. She has no education and no money. She has no work experience and no parents to rely on. So hopefully this man is always good and fair to her. But the reality is that so much goes wrong in life and in marriage these days, and if something does happen, she will have an incredibly hard time trying to stand on her own 2 feet, which was my concern. And if it does, she's gonna have an incredibly hard time. It's not that I don't understand that she has bigger priorities now, it's that she expects me to cheer her on in her life while not even trying to care about mine. I'm happy for her new little family, and I get how hard it can be being a new first-time mom, but this seems like a very one-sided relationship now. And although this relationship isn't serving me, I feel bad about dropping her. I'm tired of listening and supporting, but getting nothing in return. Especially since COVID, I just think that many have felt the decrease in relationships, as well as the people around them just as much as I have. So would I be the jerk if I dropped her as a friend? What should I do? Honestly, I kinda do think you're the jerk in this situation, because you're coming off as incredibly selfish. She literally has started her new family, and you're trying to be like, wow, but what if her husband divorces her? She's not gonna have a leg to stand on. And it's like, what are you talking about? There's not even a hint of that happening, and you're trying to like make up these hypotheticals to discourage her from getting married? Like, what is going on right now? That's so weird. And I think you're completely ignoring the fact that her priorities have shifted from friends over to her family. And by the way, that's completely normal. Like, sure, your relationship is probably never going to be the same, but that doesn't mean that you can't still be friends in some kind of way. To just drop her off the face of the earth all because she's not paying enough attention to you is really weird in my opinion. And sure, I think a conversation absolutely would be really good in this scenario, but the way you're describing this sounds incredibly selfish. So honestly, I think if I was in your shoes, I would really try to reach out and explain how I feel about the situation, because if she really is the friend that you're trying to hype her up to be, then I'm sure she would be understanding and more willing to try and make a change. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my younger cousin my college fund, all because apparently she needs it way more than I do? Because right now, my cousin and her parents are super upset with me after I shut them down, and at this point, things are getting incredibly messy. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I graduated college 2 years ago, thanks in large part to a college fund that my parents had been saving for me since I was little. I feel incredibly fortunate for that, and I worked hard to make the most of it by getting good grades and finishing on time. Now, my younger 20-year-old cousin, on the other hand, dropped out of college last year after failing a few courses, and right now she's planning to come back, but the issue is that she used up a good chunk of her own college fund during her first attempt. Recently, my aunt and uncle, her parents, came to me and asked if I'd be willing to give my cousin what's left of my college fund just to help her go back to school. I had some money left over because I got a scholarship during my last year, so there is still a decent amount of money sitting in that account. But I told them that I wasn't comfortable doing that. I've been saving that leftover money for grad school, or maybe to put towards a house one day, and I don't feel like it's my responsibility to give it up just because she didn't finish school the first time. Well, now my cousin and her parents are upset with me. My cousin says that she needs it more, and that I'm being selfish for not helping her out when I had my entire education paid for. My aunt and uncle think that I should give her the money because according to them, it's just sitting there, and they don't want her to take out any loans. I get that student loans are tough, but I worked hard for my degree, and I saved that money for my future. I don't think that I should be guilted into giving it all up. So am I the jerk for refusing to give my cousin the rest of my college fund? Because right now I'm really annoyed and I seriously am not sure what to do. No, you're not the jerk here. That's insane. First of all, how do they know anything about your college fund? Either they're going through your personal business, or they're super nosy and they squeeze that information out of your parents or something like that. Like seriously, that is so inappropriate, it's not even funny. But also, that money is 100% yours. You have every right to use that exactly how you want. And the plans you have in place, in my opinion, are good plans. You're either going to use it for grad school or put it down for a house. And both of those endeavors are super important. So for these people to step in and be like, wow, you need to give up that money, it's just sitting there. That, in my opinion, is super toxic. Because guess what? If you want it to sit there, then that's exactly where it's going to stay. Because you do not owe this cousin a single thing. And if she wants to go to school so badly, then she can pay for it herself. A strange man comes into our restaurant wearing a super powerful headlamp on his head just so he can read the menu that we had to offer. And this is honestly one of the weirdest situations I have ever been in. Here's what happened. So I work at a fine dining restaurant, and we sat an older entitled couple in our main dining room tonight. It was then that this man pulls out what can only be described described as a spelunking headlamp and affixes it to his head to read the menu. I feel the need to explain that this was no normal headlamp, which would still be insane to wear by the way, but this was a headlamp with two incredibly bright LED lights that shone all around the dining room like a cartoony searchlight. It was truly one of the most wild things I've ever seen inside of my relatively calm, fancy restaurant. Now, for better or for worse, we believe in unreasonable hospitality. We try to never say no, always accommodate, and always say yes. But situations like this put us in a pickle, because obviously this man wants his 10,000 lumen headlamp on his head, and obviously every guest around him doesn't want that. As an aside, but not really because it becomes relevant later on, a man walks in and sits down with one of the largest cowboy hats known to man on the table adjacent. It was like in Scary Movie where the cop's hat keeps getting bigger in the final form, and this too was absolutely ridiculous. After the gentleman with the miner's headlamp put it back on to eat his food, something was finally said by my general manager, who, if was asked to do so, could probably negotiate a peace treaty between two hostile countries. She was courteous, polite, professional, and explained why this spotlight could not continue to sit in the dining room, to which the wife replied by saying, if he needs to take the headlamp off, that guy needs to take his hat off. Now, I'm gonna be here to say that both things can be true at once, and while I wholeheartedly agree with her, the hat could be ignored while the headlamp could not, even though ignoring the hat took a considerable amount of energy. My manager, who should really reconsider her career, went and got an LED table lamp and put it on Headlamp Man's table, and we went about our night as it was, even though the square footage of the dining room was being impeded by the other man's cowboy hat. As the night progressed, we found out that Headlamp Man had an eye disease, and his eyes are failing, hence his need for a headlamp. Apparently he has a smaller one, but he couldn't find it. Therefore, he opted for the Mega Light. Now, he was both apologetic and a bit embarrassed, which mortified us. He went from being the most annoying person in the room to our most beloved guest, and he got a bunch of stuff for free. We then told him that we would accommodate him with a table lamp anytime he chose to return. Now, on the other hand, Cowboy Hat Man is cursed with being the type of person who is totally comfortable with wearing that type of hat both in public and in a fancy restaurant. And honestly, that's punishment enough, because sometimes things just shake out the way that they're meant to. Okay, first of all, I thought this story was going to go in a completely different direction when I started it, but it really came out to be like this nice, wholesome experience. While the wife was being a bit rude and like super entitled, the man in the story had an eye disease, so he kind of needed to use it. So it makes sense why he would use it at a restaurant, even though it was probably not a good choice. So overall, this story worked out really nicely, and hopefully this guy does come back to your restaurant, because in my opinion, he does sound like a good guy overall. Am I the jerk for not helping my boyfriend after he got in a car accident because he was looking at his phone watching a video? Here's what happened. Okay, so my boyfriend was in a car accident. He broke his left leg, his ankle, and his forearm, and he'll be out of commission for at least 9 months. Overall, he's okay, and I'm glad and thankful for that. So you might be asking yourself, why am I not helping him out? Well, because I said that I wouldn't, and I'm sticking to my decision, but it's getting harder to do so every single day. You see, my boyfriend is a reckless driver. He eats and drinks, but not alcohol, and is always on his cell phone whenever he's driving. It's been a point of contention ever since I met him, to the point that I've either taken the wheel or left him and taken an Uber home because I didn't feel safe. Ironically enough, he's never been stopped or even given a ticket over it. About 3 months ago, we were coming back from a weekend getaway, and while he was driving, he was watching a race on his cell phone. That's right, he was watching a video. I offered to take the wheel so that he could enjoy it, but he said no. We then got into a huge fight, and it finally ended when I said that if he were to get into an accident, no matter how bad it might be, I would not help him out. He then got really quiet, and we made it back home safely. Fast forward 9 weeks later, and he was in an accident, and this one was a big one. He lost control and rolled over, hitting a tree right on the driver's side. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital and was discharged a few days ago. During his time in the hospital, he confessed to me that he was distracted by his cell phone, which wasn't surprising with all things considered. Since he lives by himself, it's been quite difficult to go on with his life. I do visit him, but I don't help him. And while it does hurt me, I'm standing firm to my promise. He got himself into this situation. Why should I have to pay for it? On top of that, his family is all over me and quite displeased that I am not over there. Since all of them live miles away from where he is, they can't be there to help him out. My boyfriend is understandably angry with me, but I simply can't bring myself to be there for him, even after all the warnings that I told him. So here I am, asking if I'm the jerk here. And if I am, I'll bring myself around and be there for him. So should I help my injured boyfriend after all the things he's done? What should I do? This is so crazy to me because no, absolutely not. You're not the jerk in the slightest. And in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would have have already dumped this guy. Seriously, think about it for a second. This guy was watching videos on his phone while he was driving. He should be lucky to be alive and that no one else was hurt as well. Like, this guy is not smart. Can you imagine him doing that with a kid in the car or with you and your family? Like, that is insane. Like, he's the jerk here, not you. He was being neglectful once again, despite the fact that you tried to warn him. You tried to say over and over again that this is a bad idea and that you should not do this. But still, he refused to listen, and honestly, that is completely on him. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all for stepping away and saying that you have to deal with this, because this is a lesson that he absolutely had to learn. Am I the jerk for refusing to consider a middle name suggestion for my daughter after my dad and extended family practically tried to force me into using that name no matter what? Because right now I'm very frustrated and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my wife is pregnant with our first child. We know that we're having a girl and we have a first name already chosen. It's a name that my wife has loved for so long, and I think it's a great name too, so it was decided that we would go with her top choice. Now, middle names are not something that we have the strongest feelings about, and my wife doesn't even have a middle name, so we may go that route or not. At this point, we're kind of tossing around ideas. Several of the people in my extended family suggested I use my dad's late wife's late stepmother's name. To break that down for people, my dad was married to a woman who we will call Mary, who was not my mom. Mary had divorced parents, and her stepmother, who we will call Ruth, passed away the same time that my dad got married. Now, Mary's kids were closer to Ruth than their biological grandmother, and my dad and Mary's kids never knew Ruth, but grew up hearing a lot about her and formed a closeness to her from that. I was also not too close to Mary while she was alive and married to my dad, and I was not close to Ruth for the really brief time that I knew her. Also, Mary's legal name was also Ruth, but she went by Mary instead. So the name Ruth carries a lot of personal meaning to my dad and my step and half siblings. And even though it carries no weight for me, they believe that it should. My dad always felt that I should have loved Mary and regarded her as a second mom because I never knew mine, which, trust me, that's a complicated situation and that's a post for another day. But I always saw her as my dad's wife and nothing more. I was 11 when they met and 12 when they got married. Well, the name was suggested, and I told them that we weren't looking to do honor names, which is true, we really were not. But they said it would be a wonderful gesture, especially given that Mary and Ruth were not biologically related, but had love, and I could say the same. Well, I told them that it was nice to offer that, but one of the others could use it in the future instead. When I said that, they didn't like that, and after a few more attempts at pushing the name, I said I will absolutely not use the name as my daughter's middle name, and they need to drop it because they cannot force me to do so. And now they're angry that I was so forcefully against the name. My dad more so than anyone, because he said I was displaying my lack of affection or regard for the woman who helped raise me. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk, because this is really weird. I'm just gonna say it outright. I totally understand that your dad has a connection to Mary and he wants to have these names like idolized in the family, but for him to seriously be like, no, you have to use it, and try to force you to name your kid after that, in my opinion, is crazy. I don't care that it's a middle name. That's a weird thing to do, and you shouldn't do that to your kids. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, because your dad is being incredibly intrusive. My entitled brother rents my home and then for over 18 months refuses to pay any rent. And once I tell him that he needs to get out of my house and move on, he freaks out on me and says that I'm going back on our deal. So now I feel very frustrated and angry, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my brother is an outgoing, likable guy, but sticking to things, whether it's a job or a relationship, in a long-term type of setting just isn't his thing. Last spring, my husband and I purchased an acreage where we wanted to build our new home. The question came up as to what we would do with our current home, so we decided to rent instead of selling immediately. My brother and his now new third wife made the pitch to move in and rent to own. The conversation started over dinner with my parents, and admittedly, we let my parents' advocacy for my brother sway our decision. They realized this was the only chance my brother had to own something, so they pushed for it. At the time, my brother had a full-time job at a phone carrier and had also been given an amazing deal by his old boss to purchase the DJ company he worked nights for. Basically, the guy was moving and offered to sell the business for just the cost of the equipment financed out of his own pocket. My brother's cell phone job had benefits, and the DJ company was a multi-million-dollar business. So my husband and I made the mistake of hoping that this time my brother would take advantage of his perfect storm of opportunity. So we agreed to let him rent the house for the cost of our current mortgage, which is easily $1,000 less per month than we could rent it for. And we give him 18 months to build up his business and his credit and purchase from us when he's ready. And we agreed to take the total of his rent as his down payment. We agreed that any improvements or maintenance would come out of his budget, just as if he already owned the house. But we would give him credit towards the purchase price for anything he put into the place. Well, starting at the second month that he lived there, the rent was late. Then he decided to scrap his full-time job because the DJ company made enough money. But the problem is, he quit paying his former boss the monthly payments. He didn't bother following up on existing accounts or generating any new accounts. He just showed up at the already booked gigs like he did when he was just an employee. A bunch of the equipment got stolen and he couldn't replace it because he canceled the insurance to save money. My brother and his wife did nothing to maintain the house. We were constantly getting calls to handle lawn care. Tiny stuff was broken. We would get complaints that we took the lawnmower and the snowblower with us, and the list goes on and on. His response to repeated requests for rent payment was to say that we could just add it to what he would buy the house for later. It's now been 18 months, and my brother has less income, worse credit, and has treated the house like garbage. We told him that we're just going to forget about the missed payments, but he needs to move out and the purchase of the house is off the table. Well, he's pissed off that we went back on our deal, and my family is mad, although I suspect that it's just because they're seeing his last opportunity for stability go down the drain. This has now caused a major rift in my family, and it's honestly leaving me wondering if I did anything wrong, because right now I really don't know what to do. No, you didn't do anything wrong, and you're definitely not the jerk, because your brother is the only one who didn't follow through on any of his agreements. For starters, this is why you need to put things in writing. Like, this right here is exactly why that needs to happen, because your brother took full advantage of you. He destroyed your property, he ruined his job opportunities, and quite literally has just destroyed his life. And now there's a rift in the family because you're putting your foot down. And that really does suck, because at the end of the day, this is your property that's gonna be destroyed. Like, he's not even like taking care of it or like paying the rent, and that is crazy to me. How can anyone in their right mind seriously think that's okay? And if I was in your shoes, I would completely ignore the family. They're just mad because now they have to deal with your brother once again. They tried to push it off on you and thought to themselves, oh good, he's out of our hair. But now he's coming screaming back into your life in a way that you probably definitely did not want. So hopefully this all works out for you, because from the sounds of it, your brother sounds like an absolute nightmare. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for not going to a Taylor Swift concert? All because it's completely out of my budget. Because right now, my cousins are losing their mind over the fact that I can't afford this, demanding that I show up anyways, as they believe that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see her in person. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, my cousin is a 30-year-old man and he is single, and I'm a 28-year-old female and I'm married. And the both of us have been Taylor Swift fans for many years, and we tried to buy tickets for the Eras Tour in Miami since October of last year. However, they sold out really quickly. My budget was $600 for tickets, plus travel expenses since I live outside the United States, so in total, my budget was around $800, which was all that I could afford given that I'm married and I have other priorities. We tried looking at resale tickets, but the prices were wild, starting at $1,000 minimum. My other cousin, who's 25 and single, lives in Miami and found tickets a week before the concert for $850, which was already over my budget, but even then I was still considering it. However, when I checked the plane tickets, they were $600 on the cheapest airline, bringing the total cost to $1,450. I talked to my husband and he said it was too much to spend on a concert, especially since we have other priorities like our house. I called my cousin and I told him that he should go to the concert without me because I just simply couldn't afford it. He then started suggesting that I put it on my credit card and that I pay in small increments, or that I just go and deal with it later. I then explained that I had other priorities and I couldn't spend that much on just a concert. And also, by the way, he has a lot of air miles, so his flight would only cost him like $50. Ever since then, my cousins have been sending me messages saying I should go because it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I really want to go, as I've been dreaming about this concert, but I also know I have responsibilities, and I can't justify blindly spending $1,450. But even still, they keep messaging me, making me feel bad about not going. Today is Saturday morning, and the concert is tomorrow. They're saying I still have a chance to buy my tickets. So am I the jerk for not going and not responding to their messages anymore? Because right now, I feel incredibly frustrated. Okay, first and foremost, no, you are not the jerk in this story, because seriously, Taylor Swift isn't going anywhere. Your cousins are insane for trying to be like, oh wow, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And it's like, sure, you might miss this one concert, but if you really think that this is the only time that Taylor Swift is gonna go on tour, then you're not paying attention. Like, she is not going anywhere. She's gonna be around for a long time. But also, the cost of travel and actually actually getting there and buying the ticket, like that is just crazy. There's no way that's justifiable. So in my opinion, I think you're completely in the right by saying, no, I can't afford this concert. And the fact that your cousins are not even beginning to understand where you're coming from, in my opinion, is exactly what you needed to see. Because it shows, in my opinion, that you have your priorities right. And if I was in your shoes, I would save my money and worry about my family instead of giving it away to Taylor Swift for one night that might not even be that good. Am I the jerk for humiliating my half and step sibling by telling the truth at school about how we're related and how I want nothing to do with them? Because right now, there's a possibility that I might get expelled for telling the truth and humiliating them in the way that I did. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things off, I don't know my half sibling or any of my step siblings. In fact, I don't even call him that. We do not live together and we have never lived together. Basically, my dad cheated on my mom when she was pregnant with me, and my half sibling is a result of this. So I'm 16 and she's almost 16 as well. We are in the same grade, but we were never in the same class or shared any classes together. The mother of the half sibling, aka my dad's affair partner, was married at the time, and she has 2 out of 3 kids who are her ex-husband's kids. Now, I was still young when my mom and I learned the truth, so I don't know all the details, but the oldest turned out to be dad's, and the 2 other younger ones turned out to be the exes. And my dad and his affair partner ended up marrying each other after their divorces. Now, I had no relationship with my dad after he moved out. I never spent time with the kids in his household, and I do not consider us family. I also don't want to get to know them because of the shared connection through my dad. I will never have a relationship with my dad again, not even if he makes a huge effort in 10 years' time, because you know what? I think he's a pretty disgusting person. Now, for the last 2 years, the half-sibling has tried to make us a family all of a sudden. She left notes in my locker about wanting us to hang out and for me to be a part of her family. Now, I ignored it until she spoke to me face to face, and I straight up told her that I wasn't interested and to please just leave me alone. People will also ask why we're in the same school, and it's because the only other option is a private school, and my mom couldn't afford that. She's basically providing for me alone because my dad has a huge child support debt. I could probably count on both hands the number of payments that he made for me, and my mom has been to court, and he got his wages garnished, but then he just quit his job. So now the oldest step sibling is 14 years old and is in the same school as us now, and both of them are trying to act like we're actually family. They don't like that I'm not interested, and they told some kids at school that their mom is my stepmom and has been raising me, and I'm being a jerk and refusing to accept my family. They also said that my mom couldn't look at me because of dad and sent me to them and never made contact again. When this made its way to me, which took like a day at most, I told the truth to the kids who told me that my dad cheated and made a half sibling, and that she was an affair kid on both sides, that I never spent a minute with them outside of school, and that their parents are cheaters who messed up everybody's lives, and I'm the only child in every way that counts. Well, now they're getting a lot of garbage about it, because I could prove what I said since my friends hang out at my house all the time. Eventually, the principal got involved, and apparently my step-sibling and my half-sibling's mom wanted me expelled for humiliating her kids in the way that I did, apparently. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you are not the jerk because they absolutely started it. Let's look at the facts here for a second. They seriously came to you and they were like, come on, let's be a family. We want to be a family right now. You got to accept it. And then when you said, no, I don't want to be a family, leave me alone, they started spreading false rumors about you. Like that alone would make me so mad it's not even funny. Never mind the fact that you're raised in a really awful situation where your dad's a scumbag and now his kids are coming after you to try and like pull you into the family, but now you're also being lied about to everybody around you. Like that is not fair for you at all. You didn't do anything to deserve that. So if I was in your shoes and I found out my half and step siblings were talking garbage about me, then in my opinion, the gloves are off and the truth is coming out. Because seriously, why should they make up lies and you not be allowed to tell the truth? If it hurts that much, then maybe you shouldn't mess around with it. Maybe they should have respected the original poster's wishes. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but that makes sense to me. So no, of course you're not the jerk. This is such a dumb situation that they literally got themselves into. Because if they had just listened to you the first time, then literally none of this would have happened in the first place. I hooked up with my coworker who is basically my boss, and now I absolutely regret it, as work has become unbearable and I now feel completely trapped. Here's what happened. I'm a 26-year-old female who's a surgical tech, and I work closely with a 38-year-old orthopedic surgeon. He's dominant, demanding, and frequently harsh. I found his attitude frustrating, but oddly enough, also attractive. As we worked together, our dynamic shifted, turning into a playful, sometimes flirtatious back and forth. Well, one day during a case, he made a spicy comment towards me, if you know what I mean, and I responded in kind. Later, as I was passing through the dictation room, he told me to give him my number. And he didn't ask me, he told me. So I complied, and soon we were spending quality time together multiple times a week, if you know what I mean. Despite the intensity of our relationship, it didn't seem to affect our ability to work together. We kept things physical, rarely getting into emotional territory, though he did open up enough for me to glimpse why he could be so cold. But everything changed last week. I was out at lunch with a friend when he called, demanding that I come to his house right now. I explained that I was with someone, but he started yelling, swearing, and told me I had 20 minutes to get over there. And right then, I felt embarrassed, as another woman in the bathroom overheard him yelling. So I made an excuse to my friend and I just left, feeling incredibly anxious. When I arrived, he was in a bad mood. I asked what was wrong, and he just muttered something about having a rough day at work before initiating some quality time in an aggressive way, if you know what I mean. He had been assertive before, but this time it felt like more than that. I then left his house feeling really shaken up, and when I got home, I messaged him saying that I couldn't see him anymore, and he did not respond. Now, work has become absolutely unbearable. He's been humiliating me in front of the entire surgical team, demanding me in ways that are hard to describe, and right now I feel trapped, unsure of how to navigate this situation, or what my next step should be. What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, you should definitely not only find a new job, but also report this guy to human resources. Like, for starters, this is already a horrible mess up on your end, and hopefully you learned a hard lesson that no, you probably should not hook up with the people you work with. But seriously, the way this guy's treating you is not normal and not okay. He obviously has some kind of like power trip going on, and this is not something that he should ever get away with. So hopefully this works out for you, and hopefully you never make this mistake again. Because of course, the way he's treating you is completely unfair. The fact that you hooked up with this guy who basically was your boss in the first place, in my opinion, was a very stupid thing to do. Am I the jerk for telling off my mom after she forced me as a kid to dress up as a hot dog for Halloween when all I wanted to dress up as was Snow White? Because right now, my mom is claiming that I humiliated her, despite the fact that she tried to use this memory against me. And right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so there's this new Target commercial going around where a little girl dresses up as a hot dog, and it came on while my family was watching a scary movie. I was home from college for the weekend and I brought my boyfriend, and my mother decided that it would be hilarious to mention that she had made me a hot dog costume as a kid, except the way that she told the story, it was apparently my request. She said all the girls wanted to be a Disney princess, but I asked to be a hot dog, and so she gone out of her way to make me that costume. But this is not what happened, and I said as much. What actually happened is that I wanted to be Snow White, and I had told everyone, including the teachers, that I was going to be Snow White. I was obsessed with that movie as a kid, to the point where I would actually get invested in doing chores because I was cleaning up just like Snow White. My dad and I would watch the movie all the time, and I was very excited to be Snow White for Halloween, especially because my ballet studio was doing a special princess dance for Halloween, and we had all signed up for the special princess slot, and I had shown up early with my dad the week before so I could get to be Snow White. Well, my mother decided that she wanted to be quirky and that Snow White was a bad role model after I got in trouble for trying to cook dinner for my family. Now, mind you, I was about 8 years old, and I tried to make hot dogs like how she made food for the dwarves in the movie, and I made an absolute mess. So my mom surprised me on the day of with this crappy hot dog suit and told me if I didn't wear it, she'd never let me watch Snow White ever again. She then took a million pictures, the other girls teased me for months, and it was one of the most humiliating moments of my childhood. Well, I told the real story, and I mentioned that I got through the day by pretending that she was the evil queen making me dress in rags, but the rags happened to be a garbage meat costume. Well, after I said that, she got really quiet, and after we left, my brother says that she was crying and looking at the pictures from that Halloween. Now, I didn't want to make my mom cry, but it's an awful memory for me, and it felt like she was trying to humiliate me all over again in front of my boyfriend. So am I the jerk for calling out my mom for what she did to me as a kid? Because right now, I'm seriously upset and I really don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all, because what she did to you as a kid was horrible. Like, not only does this make her a horrible parent in my opinion, but it's also so toxic that she would be like, oh yeah, this is how I remember it. This is how I'm gonna spin this memory to make it look like you were the idiot. Because the reality of this is that she did this because she thought it'd be funny, and she did it at your expense, meaning that it wasn't a joke, but instead she bullied you. And this is at an age where you really like Snow White, which by the way is completely innocent and something that shouldn't be punished all because you messed up some food. Like, that is so mean, and I'm so sorry that you had to deal with that. So if your mom wants to cry about you telling the truth, which by the way, that was the truth of what really happened, then go ahead and let her. She had no right to treat you that way as a kid, and she definitely does does not deserve the chance to respin that story to make you look like the bad guy. Am I the jerk for refusing to hold an intervention for my friend over a custody battle they were having with their wife? Here's what happened. Okay, so I was asked by my childhood friend, let's call them Sam, to hold an intervention for their former partner, who is also a childhood friend of mine. We'll call her Jean. Sam and Jean have a 2.5-year-old child together. A few months ago, they had gotten into an argument where Jean ended up asking Sam to leave her house, and because she felt unsafe, she ended up calling the police. Sam eventually left on their own, and Jean asked them to not come back, stating that she would prefer them working through the courts for shared custody of their daughter, as she no longer wished to speak to them. Since then, Sam has also come to me and my fiancé, also they could confide in and get advice from. They missed their child and wanted to do anything they could to see her again. They felt betrayed that someone they cared for would pull their child away from them and call the police on them. And you know what? We vaguely understood as new parents ourselves, as our daughter was only a month old at the time. But slowly, the simple venting and sharing of advice turned into increasingly ridiculous pleas for help. They first asked us to sit down and try to convince Jean that she overreacted and to let Sam see their child. And while we did agree to sit down and speak with her to see what was going on from her end, we still made no promises. Jean stated that she felt unsafe around Sam and just wishes to figure things out legally. But Sam simply did not want to agree with this, believing that if they settled in court, this meant their parents would get grandparental rights. For reference, Sam has not had contact with their parents for a long time, since Sam had an awful upbringing on behalf of them. Jean, on the other hand, has been allowing their child to visit her grandparents pretty regularly. One day, Sam came up with a plan. They wanted me to watch the children, while my fiancé and another mutual friend of ours held an intervention-style meeting for Jean, where we wouldn't allow her to leave until we convinced her that she was wrong to take Sam's child away from them, and that she needed to work out a custody agreement out of court and stop allowing their child to visit their parents. Well, when this was offered, we straight up refused, as it seemed like an irrational idea. Jean comes with a lot of baggage herself, and I was very certain that cornering her would do no good. She is still my friend, and I don't believe her feelings in the situation are exactly wrong either. We encouraged Sam to instead work on legal action to get custody of their daughter and offered any other help that we could give. But they continued to pressure us into doing the intervention despite our refusal, calling us bad friends for not wanting to do it. So are we the jerks for refusing to hold this kind of intervention? Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Before we go any further, the original poster has an update to the story. This is what they had to say. Okay, I need to give an update. I have in fact warned Jean about this long prior to me making this post. We are now no longer friends with Sam, and we've distanced ourselves from them completely. The reason I posted on here was because we have mutual friends who are skeptical of what's going on, as Sam is somewhat twisting everything around. I guess I just needed some validation that I made the best choice for my family and for my friendship with Jean. Sam was my friend longer, so I guess that is why I tried so hard to help them initially. But when it became too much and too uncomfortable for me as a new mom, I distanced myself completely, and eventually we cut ties. Wow, this story is insane. Sam sounds out of their mind unhinged, and the fact that they would try to force you to do some kind of intervention, in my opinion, is completely insane. You can't just corner someone on behalf of someone else and somehow get involved in something you don't want to be a part of. And by the way, this is no way to have an intervention. If Jean was having a substance problem of some kind, or they had an addiction that was tearing the family apart, or something along those lines, then sure, have an intervention and try to make them see the light of day. But we're talking about a custody situation between two parents. Like, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a nightmare to get between. There's no way I would ever want to pick sides in that. And it's a good thing that you cut ties with Sam, because I'm sure Jean was not making it up when she said, I don't feel safe around them. I mean, just look at Sam's behavior overall. They were freaking out left and right, being like, you have to have this intervention. I need to have this settled outside of court. This needs to happen. Like, seriously, this behavior is crazy. And you were smart to get away and not be involved. So no, you're definitely not the jerk, and I'm glad that you stepped away for the sake of your sanity, because Sam does not sound well, and I think this really could have been bad if you did get involved. My psycho grandmother demands that she be allowed to show up at my house anytime she wants so that she can visit my baby. Things get so bad that she even shows up when she's not invited and goes on to make false claims about me, all because I wouldn't bend to her will every time she screamed at me. And I'm now on the verge of going no contact with this woman because her behavior is honestly so insane. Here's what happened. So my child was born with health issues that required frequent doctor's appointments. We told everyone that we were accepting visitors, but you have to call first because we are frequently out of the house. Now you would think to yourself, this is reasonable, right? Well, unfortunately, you would be completely wrong. My grandmother is the quintessential entitled old person. implying that you should expect bad behavior on a regular basis. And wouldn't you know it, this was no exception. She rallied my family to go after me because as a great-grandma, she is entitled to a visit whenever she feels like it. I asked them all point blank how she could visit at our house if we're at the hospital when she gets there. No one could give me an answer, and most begrudgingly just backed off. But not her though. She decided to make a point. So this idiot drives the hour to our house without calling one afternoon. We aren't there because we're at an appointment, and she goes rabid, blowing up my phone that I need to come home this instant and screeching about how I locked the door to keep her out. Mind you, we lived on the main street of a small city. Like, no kidding, Sherlock, it's to keep everybody out. I obviously said, no, we aren't leaving this appointment early, and you can wait if you want, but we won't be home for hours. Have fun sitting on the stoop. She then blows up my father's phone to the point that he thinks his dad has had another heart attack. She lies that we talked on the phone and said I'd be home all day, which we definitely didn't. She then makes a Facebook post with a selfie outside my house, saying that I locked her out and I won't let her see the baby. Like, she seriously is so delusional. After that, the rule became not only can you not come without asking first, but I will no longer be answering any phone calls. All communication must be through text messaging because I need proof of what was and wasn't said, and you can't say we spoke on the phone if everyone knows I no longer take phone calls from anyone except for my parents and my friends. Well, this brings up another breakdown, calling multiple times a day, dropping by the house when we're gone, as well as complaining to our landlord who caught her looking in our windows. She finally lets up and starts messaging me to set up a time to visit, or at least that's what we thought was going to happen. She wanted to come by at 10 o'clock in the morning, but I said we had an appointment and we would be gone. If she wanted to come that day, it would have to be 1 o'clock p.m. Well, she agreed in message to come at 1 o'clock. Well, as we're at my son's appointment, my phone started blowing up with calls from my father, screaming at me that how dare I force this poor woman to come and set an appointment and then leave on purpose to deny her baby time. Eventually, I hung up on him mid-rant and sent him a screenshot of her agreeing to show up at 1 o'clock p.m. And I did the same to everyone else who called to chew me out on her behalf. And ironically enough, no one seemed to have a response to that. She was still there when we got home. She came in, took a picture with the baby to post to Facebook, and then she left, muttering that I was making her look bad by letting my maternal grandparents visit and post pictures with the baby. She was quite literally in and out in less than 5 minutes. After this, she put her foot down to protect herself from my awful treatment, and then she just refused to ever visit. And according to her, not even an apology would repair the hurt that I've caused. I've had family encourage me to apologize, and they once again couldn't provide an answer to my nonchalant question of, well, what for? Because my grandmother's actions are indeed insane, and I seriously hope I don't deal with her ever again. Wow, this is insane, like grade A crazy. And this is also, in my opinion, a one-way ticket to never being allowed at my house ever again. We're talking banned forever, as well as getting video surveillance around my house for the rest of time. Like, seriously, this is not okay. She's just straight up making things up about you and making you look bad, even though you have literal proof that she agreed to show up at a specific time. Like, this kind of behavior is so insane, it's not even funny. So good for you for standing up for yourself and putting your family first. Because truly, anyone who has any kind of agreement with your grandmother at this point, in my opinion, is just as bad as her. And that is absolutely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My mom owes me thousands of dollars in debt, and when I asked for that money back, totaling to over $5,000, she laughed in my face and said that she would never pay me back. And now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So I need to start off by saying that I'm not sure how to approach this situation. My mother fell for the trading Forex lifestyle in 2016, and she didn't get a job until earlier this year. In part, this was because I moved out and she wasn't able to use my paychecks anymore to pay their bills. From the ages of 14 to 21, she has pawned countless of my favorite items, namely my Xbox, my KitchenAid mixer, etc., and I was only told about that once I found out. In addition to this, she has taken all of the money that relatives sent me for birthdays, Christmases, and graduation during all of those years that they happened. She was routinely siphoning my paychecks as well as setting up those quick app loans in my name. I received my first credit card at the age of 18, and she ran it up over the limit and didn't pay any of it back, and I'm still unable to apply for any credit card that isn't secured. Throughout all of this though, she promised to pay me back, and of course I believed her. I mean, this is my mom we're talking about. After a while though, I stopped keeping track of all of the money that she's borrowed, but I know it totals to well over $5,000. We had an arrangement where I told her in instead of paying me back, she could buy me a car, which she had been promising me ever since I was 16 years old. Last week, I told her I'd been looking at cars, and she seemed enthusiastic, excited even to help out. Well, I called her yesterday to let her know that I found a car, and I asked how she was going to contribute. And it was right then that she laughed in my face and told me that she wasn't paying for anything. I said to her, okay, well then give me the thousands of dollars back that you owe me. And she just laughed in my face again and told me that she didn't have any of it. When in fact, earlier in the conversation, she told me that she had $4,000 put away. I understand that she's finally catching up on all of their debt after basically gambling all of those years, but do I not deserve any form of compensation? I kept the secret debt from my dad all of this time, so he thinks I'm a lazy freeloader only child who just wants my parents to pay for everything, not knowing how I sacrificed my teenage years just to keep the house afloat in the first place. I'm finally raising my credit score and I'm accumulating my own savings right now, but I genuinely don't know how to move past this or approach the situation with my family. I was pretty much my mom's therapist during this time, which makes me feel more emotionally guilty for asking for the money back or telling my family the truth. I have no idea what to do. I don't even need the money, but I can't let go of the resentment that I feel, especially when I see other parents paying for and doing everything they can to support their child. What should I do? Okay, first of all, your mom is a narcissist and she does not sound like a good person. For starters, she already had the family in a massive amount of debt, and then she said, oh, you've got to keep this a secret, while also in that same sentence taking all of your money, all because she's a deadbeat and can't keep her end of the bargain up with this stupid debt that she has. But for her to sit there and laugh at you and be like, oh, I don't have that money, and refuse to pay you back all the money that she owes you, that in my opinion is so toxic and so uncalled for. You don't deserve that in the slightest, and that is so unfair. So I know if I was in your shoes, and I can only speak for what I would do in this situation, I would 100% be telling the truth to everybody who would want to listen. I would gather evidence and I would see what I can do and if I have any options of getting that money back. But for your sake, hopefully things work out in your favor, because what your mom did to you is completely unfair. My in-laws are an absolute nightmare, as I'm forced to spend 9 hours in the car with them just to go to a wedding that I didn't even want to go to in the first place. Here's what happened. Okay, my husband and I have been living with my husband's parents because my mother-in-law had a stroke in late 2022. There is a lot of history between us, and they've always been unfair to my husband and his brother. So his little brother, we'll call him Ronald, got married a few days ago, and the whole thing has been a bit of a nightmare. And I have no friends, so I have to tell someone. Some minor details are changed just in case my mother-in-law sees this post. For starters, a week ago, the Sunday before the trip, they tried to buy plane tickets for 4 of us, then realized that the company they have points on would be way too expensive. We have known about this wedding for months, and they alluded to always having tickets, and then all of a sudden, we find out there are no tickets. We offered to even buy our own on a different and cheaper airline, and they said, no, let's just save some money. And that single comment alone made an hour-long flight into a 9-hour drive. While taking care of my mother-in-law when she first got sick, I had a fall and I broke my leg. And as a side note, my father-in-law accused me of faking it until we got x-rays back that proved him wrong. So a 9-hour drive isn't something I can do without a lot of pain. But I sucked it up and I did the road trip with them. 9 hours of silence and my father-in-law listening to classical music the entire time. On this trip though, we had many different issues. Service workers were treated like garbage, and they forced us to take many hugs. And I seriously mean they forced us. My mother-in-law simply can't keep her hands to herself. My mother-in-law also keeps eating and drinking other people's food without asking. They also left their phones in the room on purpose, and then made us do anything that they needed a phone for. For example, they needed a bunch of maps, and my mother-in-law kept wanting to Google stupid questions. My mother-in-law also keeps giving directions from a memory of this town a billion years ago, and this is back when she was in college, and my father-in-law takes her directions rather than the maps that he made us Google. They were also late to the wedding. My mother-in-law kept trying to keep the wedding license, and they were late to the reception as well because my mother-in-law wanted to buy sandals for the beach, and we're talking $30 sandals. What happened to us saving money? And to top it all off, at Ronald's reception, my father-in-law cornered my husband and Ronald, and in front of everyone, he interrogated them about how much data they have used, even though, by the way, they have an unlimited plan. And overall, my father-in-law was just grumpy the rest of the reception. So we've just kind of taken the day to hide in our hotel room and just watch some TV. So seriously, is this normal behavior? I can't figure out if it's lead paint or dementia or narcissism or what, but regardless, I am simply done with their behavior. Wow, I cannot believe you agreed to a 9-hour drive to this stupid wedding. The second that phrase is even uttered out of anybody's mouth is the moment I'm just like, yeah, I don't really want to go if that's what we're we're gonna do. Like for me, I'm either gonna fly there or I won't be there, but I'm not gonna drive 9 hours just to get there. So yes, your in-laws sound incredibly entitled, and I don't blame you for being annoyed by their behavior. An entitled old Karen gets pissed off at me after her mail is delivered to the wrong address, claiming that I had been holding it from her for months, despite the fact that I am not a mail carrier and I was literally just trying to do the right thing. Here's what happened. Okay, so my in-laws have a home in my city, but they spend the majority of the year on the other side of the country, where most of my husband's family lives. They're gone so long, they have their mail forwarded to their other address while they are there. That way, no one needs to pick up their mail while they're gone. Well, a couple weeks ago, my mother-in-law called and asked me to check their mail because something she was waiting for had not arrived, and she wondered if it had been delivered here by accident. They live in a 50-plus community, and all the mail for the entire community is delivered to a set of standalone mailboxes. I walked to their mailbox, unlocked it, and found that there was a few pieces of mail, several flyers, and a small package. I saw that the package had a different name on it, and it appeared to have been delivered to the wrong address. But my in-laws' address, for example, is 123 Fake Street, and the package was meant for 123 Fake Avenue, and obviously those are fake addresses. And wouldn't you know it that when I looked around the immediate area of the mailboxes, I could see 123 Fake Avenue from where I was standing. So I decided rather than put the small package back in the mail slot for the mail person to figure out, I'll just walk to their house and deliver it to them. And of course, I think you know where this is going. I knock on their door, and I know this will shock you, but a decrepit old entitled lady opens the door. I ask if the person on the package lives here, and she says yes. So I tell her that I've just collected the mail for my in-laws, and that a package that was meant for you was delivered to their mailbox by mistake, and then I hold it out to her. Now, it's as she is taking the package from me that I make my mistake. I apologize and I tell her that I'm not sure how long the package has been in the mailbox since they've been gone for a while, and I've only checked the box just now, because honestly, in hindsight, I should have just said nothing. That's when the Crypt Keeper's doppelganger barks at me. She shouts at me and says, "You've had it for how long?" As she's saying this, her equally decrepit husband, the rightful owner of the package, shuffles up behind her. I say to her, I'm not sure how long it's been in the mailbox. It could have been a few months since they have been gone for a while, and right now I'm just shrugging my shoulders, thinking, okay, better late than never. She then croaks at me, "Months? Well, what good is it to us now? We would have already taken it up with the company we ordered from and had another one delivered." I simply said, well, I don't know how long it's been there, thinking that maybe she should look at where it's from and she can figure out how long they've been waiting for it. Her husband then chimes in asking what it is, but she has already decided that she's pissed off at how inconsiderate I've been. The Crypt Keeper shakes the package in his face and says, "She's had this for months." At this point, I reiterate by saying I don't know how long it's been in the mailbox. It could have been months or it could have been delivered yesterday. If you've already replaced it, well, now you have two of them. And at this point, I throw my arms in the air and I do jazz hands, like I've just done a magic trick of some kind. Now, shame on me for trying to lighten the mood because she just gives me a scathing look. She's then muttering and turning away to let the door slam in my face, and I wish I could say that I called out with a smile, "You're welcome," before the door shut, but it wasn't until I was back in my car that I realized that it hadn't occurred to either of them to say thank you. So honestly, I guess I'm the one at fault for trying to do something nice, because people like this truly will never be happy. Yeah, this is that classic scenario where no good deed goes unpunished. Here you are trying to get their mail to them, and they try to sit there and be like, "Wow, you've had this for months, how dare you?" Completely missing the point that you are not the reason they didn't get their mail. And I cannot stand people who act this way, where they're just honestly so pissed off over the dumbest things, and it's always at your expense. So yeah, good for you for doing the right thing, because honestly, these people definitely did not deserve your kindness. Am I the jerk for not letting my sister move in, even though she was facing homelessness, all because of the way that she and her boyfriend left my house the first time that they lived with me? Here's what happened. Back in 2022, my sister asked if she, her boyfriend, and her newborn could stay with us for about 3 months, which by the way turned into about 11 months, all the way until they had gotten their taxes, so they could save up and move to another place. My partner and I agreed because it was only going to be a few months, and I didn't want them to be potentially homeless with an infant. I only had 3 actual rules. Rule number 1 was take care of the wood floors. Rule number 2 was to help out with rent when they can. And rule number 3 is no births. My sister stayed home with the baby mostly, while us 3 worked through the day. But soon they were consistently piling dishes, there were dirty diapers, food, trash, and just about everything left around all over the place. And they had also spent all their tax money and asked if they could stay longer. After a while, my sister was getting really comfortable with asking me to watch my niece. And I would end up watching my niece almost every night or day off that I had for about 1 to 5 hours. It got to the point where my partner and I just couldn't really hang out. Them living with us was starting to have an effect on me and my partner's relationship at that point. She had gotten prescribed birth control, and shortly after that, I started to notice a bunch of ovulation tests in our bathroom. And not long after that appointment, she happily came up to me and showed me a positive pregnancy test. She tried to lie and say that she was too fertile for birth control to work, and said that it was an accident, but it was so hard to believe. So then I told them both that they had to leave before the baby was born. Now, when they moved out, her boyfriend literally said to me before they left, "Wow, your house looks trashed." And then they up and left. Their bedroom floors were super sticky, random substances were on the walls, and there were a bunch of dirty dishes that were left for me to clean up. Now, it's been about a year and a half since they left, and currently my partner is having some heart issues causing him to be out of work, and he will soon need some surgery. So I'm riding solo to keep a roof over our head, keep the bills paid, and put food in the fridge. Well, my sister called me in a panic, saying that her and her two babies that are now toddlers are going to be homeless because she was on a wait list for a rental assistance apartment and that she had done everything that she could. And her boyfriend had been having issues keeping a job because he has a felony. She then asked if they could stay with us for a few weeks. But you know what? I told her no. I couldn't take on any more responsibility than I already have, that I'm having difficulty keeping up with my own stuff. So I suggested that she could reach out to her boyfriend's parents and see if they could help out in any kind of way. Well, they agreed to let them stay, and I called to check up on them, but I got no response, which is very unusual for her, and I feel like she may be upset with me, and I just frankly have so much going on that I couldn't go through that again. So honestly, am I the jerk for turning them away? Because right now, I'm really not sure what to think. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. You tried the first time to see if they could work in your house, but it just didn't work out. They were bad guests, they weren't cleaning up after themselves, and they broke pretty much every rule around the house. And that alone is more than enough reason for you to be like, no, I'm sorry, but you've got to go. So no, you're definitely not the jerk because you absolutely have gone out of your way to help them in the past. Am I the jerk for not giving my mother $2,500 just so she can pay all of her bills? Because right now she's calling me horrible names, and at this point I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of background, my stepfather passed away 4 years ago in a very sudden motorcycle accident. My mother was a painter and a contractor, but lost contracts and jobs because she wouldn't show up because she was depressed or hungover. She has been a long-time alcoholic, long before my stepfather passed away. She hasn't been paying her bills and has been relying on other people to pay it for her. My stepfather's sister paid her $700 electric bill before we arrived because she didn't want my kids to go without power. I arrived here in my hometown to my mom's house in June. My children and I were escaping a bad situation that left us with nothing but a suitcase of clothing. My aunt is the one who paid for our plane tickets to get here, with my mother promising her that she would help us get settled and deal with the situation. Now, I knew when I arrived that my family was struggling, and the kids and I would be a heavy financial burden, as I had nothing to offer financially. With my mother not working, everything fell to my younger sister. If it wasn't for my sister, the kids and I would not have eaten, and I am eternally grateful. She is only 19 years old. My mother's also relying on my sister for wine, smokes, and whatever else she needs. With money so tight, I felt like the kids and I were causing too much problems. So I decided the best thing for the kids and I would be to go to a family shelter, and this is currently where I'm at right now. In my country, we have something called a child tax benefit, and this gives parents a small amount of money once a month. I have been fighting for almost a year to receive mine back, as it was stopped due to them thinking I still live with my ex. This ended up with a large back pay that I received, which was roughly about $25,000. Now this is where I might be the jerk. My family knows about the back pay, and I have agreed to help my sister get tires and get her car inspected. But my mother has also asked for about $2,500. She needs to pay off all of her bills and wants to get her hair done. But I said no, and that this is just way too much. She has now cursed me out, saying that I'm a jerk and that I'm greedy and selfish, and this is even when I offered her a smaller amount of about $1,000. She was constantly texting me how awful of a person I am, so I blocked her on all platforms because I have enough stuff to deal with as it is right now. I do understand that my family is struggling right now, and they did take us in when no one else could. I did try to explain to her that this money would go to an apartment, but it was to no avail. My aunt and grandfather are on the side of me not being a jerk, but my mother and sister are saying that I am. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk because your mom clearly has an alcohol problem, and she just uses people to get money so she can get by. Like, that's all that's going on right now, and that is so obnoxious. And you know what? If she has bills that need to be paid, then she can absolutely send you the invoice for it, and you can pay for it directly. Like in this scenario, there's no way I would ever give her cash. She's already proven she can't be trusted with it, and I just don't think you'll ever get that money back ever. So no, you are not the jerk for not giving
her that kind of money because chances are she would probably just drink it, and that would truly be a complete waste of time and money.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.